Welcome, everybody, to the Mormon Newscast. I'm sorry, by the way, folks, if you are just joining and you're like, hey, wait a minute, they shows it's going to be on Wednesday. Not the case at all. Here we are. It's Monday night, Mormon Newscast. Rebecca Biblioteca, Mr. Radio Free Mormon, myself, Bill Reel. Glad to see all of you out there. It is Monday, the 10th of August. And to the two of you, how are the both of you doing?
I'm great, thank you.
Excellent.
Rebecca? I am sneezing and my eyes are watering. I was gone for the weekend. I left my dog door open to accommodate my dogs. A magpie walked into my house, walked into my studio. When I came home and walked in, but feathers are everywhere. So if I'm sneezing and rubbing my eyes, I know you can't make this stuff up.
Wow. Was it Heckle or Jekyll?
No, I'm not kidding. I wish I had security footage of it just hopping into the dog door, walking around, checking it out. It sat on my ring light and, bent it. It's
upon the
crazy.
bust of Palace, just above your chamber door.
That's it. So I'm still finding feathers, finding all kinds of stuff I won't go into. But to answer your question, Bill, other than that, I'm fantastic.
I see you both. Good to hear. I see you both did go into the YouTube channels and did put, we'll be right there. So appreciate that very much. I'll just say here, okay, I don't know what's going on.
She did, but I'll take credit for it.
Perfect. Let me put this up. This is our thumbnail tonight. This is obviously going to be our main story. The Electronic Frontier Foundation, as well as the ACLU, submitted amicus briefs in the LDS Church versus Mormon Stories legal case that's going on. We'll go into that in just a moment, but we do have some sad news that we need to at least mention. First, just to honor the life of Carol Lynn Pearson, born September 27th, 1939, died July 29th, 2026. I think we were all sort of caught off guard when we heard that this had happened. I've had the chance to sit down with Carol Lynn Pearson and have an interview, at least on one occasion, maybe two. I know you two are both familiar with her as well. There's a lot of talk in Mormonism of Eliza R. Snow being the Mormon poetess in early Mormon history. But I think Carol Lynn Pearson gave her a run for her money and did a lot of work, both in helping the church to confront the LGBT issue because of her being, her husband and her being married to him, obviously, and dealing with his coming out as gay and being with him all the way to the end of his life in ways that were full of compassion and kindness extended to him. And then also she spent really her life's energy trying to connect Mormons through poetry to their faith and to wrestling with other issues at large and to think about the ways that people feel outside of themselves. And so I wanted to pause for just a moment and get your thoughts on the passing of Carol Lynn Pearson.
Rebecca.
Oh, I get to go first. There you go. Well, I will say that she had a huge impact on me when I was a tween and, a young teenager. My Turn on Earth, she wrote that along with Lex. And so how many times did I listen to that? How many times did I play that sheet music? How many of those songs are still in my brain? I could sing probably the entire score. I bet a lot of you are like that. That was Mormonism in the musical form. And so she was sort of celebrated in my household growing up for that and other songs and things and poetry. But then it was interesting because when everything happened with her husband and when she took her husband in and nursed him to the end, and when she wrote about that, my parents, she was not popular in my home anymore. They sort of frowned on that. They didn't want anything about that, to be known in my house. So I kind of lost track of her until I went to college, and then discovered what an incredible poetess she is. And of course, The Ghost of Eternal Polygamy, the book that especially for women is very pivotal for a lot of us. So yeah, she's amazing. I never had the chance to interview her, but I certainly watched her on a lot of all the rest of your podcasts. And it's very sad. We'll miss her.
Yes, I count myself lucky to have been able to know her, though somewhat, at a distance, but I was able to speak to her, have her on the show a few times on panels and interview her as well. An absolutely lovely human being. And I am in the process right now of figuring out that this Friday on Mormonism After Dark, I think I'm going to devote that show, though it's usually not devoted to any particular thing, but to reminiscences of Carol Lynn Pearson and what it is that she meant to you, because I know she meant a lot to so many people, and I'll share a brief story at that time. But, yeah, it's very, very, sobering, and you're right, it came out of the blue. I don't know if anybody was thinking about this, and then it happens, and you go, "Oh my gosh."
Yeah, her husband at the time, Gerald, in the book that she wrote, Goodbye, I Love You, and she's wrote numerous books, and you point out, Rebecca, other forms of art as well, and she really is, an elite artist among Mormonism. Uh, she's just contributed a lot to this space, and the book Goodbye, I Love You, I would highly recommend to anybody who has family that is both in the church and LGBT, and trying to figure out ways to form bridges between those two facets of one's humanity, their religious beliefs and their sexual orientation. The other thing too, so I'll put that one, skip that slide to the next one here, and we also have this Chandler Chuck Hendry, 27, dies in a car crash. He is an LDS apologist. I didn't know of him. I don't know if either of you did. I don't think you did.
Mm-mm.
He's the founder of Restored Truth. We want to acknowledge the tragic death of Chandler Chuck Hendry, a 27-year-old Latter-day Saint apologist and the creator of Restored Truth. None of us here on the newscast knew Chandler personally. I don't think his work had really crossed our radar yet, but from everything we're seeing, it sounds like his influence within the younger online LDS apologetic community was growing. He produced videos defending the church and its theology, engaged critics and other Christians in debate, and appears to have developed a community of people who genuinely valued his work and him personally. Hendry died Friday, August 7th, following a 3-vehicle crash in Lehigh at Timpanogos Highway and Morning Vista Road. Police say he ran a red light, struck 2 vehicles. He was reportedly not wearing a seatbelt and was taken to the hospital, where he passed. What has stood out since then is the amount of grief, concern, and love being expressed from the apologetic side of the Mormon community. People who followed him, worked alongside him, and even disagreed with him have described someone they believed was doing meaningful work and whose influence was just beginning to grow. Whatever disagreements any of us might have with apologetics, 27 is an extraordinarily young age to have one lose their life, and there are clearly a lot of people hurting right now. Our condolences go out to his family, friends, and the community that cared about him. And I, you and I were talking before the show started, RFM, and you had mentioned it prompted you. Maybe I'll let you say, but it prompted you to make some extend some phone calls to others, and it sort of had on your mind that we all just need to be safer out there on the roads.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And so, life is tenuous, it's temporary, it's evanescent, it's here today, it's gone tomorrow. It's here today, it's gone today. It's here this minute, it's gone next minute.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I texted some people and just wanted to make sure I told them I love them and be safe out there and be careful and, wear your seatbelts,
Yeah.
pay attention to what's going on around you. That's not always, things can happen anyway, but at least you can try and minimize it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did the same thing actually. And I do have immediate family members who follow him and are of that age. And so I texted them right away to say, I was sorry if it's a person that you follow and cared about. And also wear your gosh darn seatbelt all the time. A lot of these accidents are very survivable if you're wearing your seatbelt. And it's interesting. I mean, I've been thinking about this a lot today because where the accident happened, that when I lived in Utah County, that was my commute to work. I drove that every morning for 7 years. I know that road, Timpanogos Highway, it's very fast. There's lots of people commuting. Everybody's back and forth. This accident happened early in the morning. There's also a lot of new cross streets as infrastructure builds up. It's right by the location of the new Lehigh Temple. And so I know there's just a lot. And if you're not paying absolute attention with all the commuters and all the new things and the construction, anything can happen at any minute. So I've been feeling really bad about this because he's a kid the age of my kids. And so please, everybody, wear your seatbelt. It can make a huge difference. It really can. The other vehicles that were struck, there were no injuries. And I did read somewhere there were seatbelts there in that case. So please, everybody.
Yeah. The only other thing I'll just note with that is if I'm not mistaken, Utah is known as being like the second worst state for drivers, the quality of driving by drivers in Utah. And so if again, half our audience, I think, is sort of living in the state of Utah, and it would be just that much more important to just pay close attention and to be safe out there. So there's that. I'll move on from those two tragedies. Our top news stories tonight, we're going to go into the amicus brief filed in the Mormon Stories trademark case. Radio Free Mormon has that. Then Rebecca has a couple of stories on LDS disaffection, and I think they're really well done. There's a lot of data there, and Rebecca will give us a synopsis of those. And then after that, I'll share a third story about LDS defection, which seems to me to be the Deseret News and an opinion writer in that newspaper. They're taking, I think, a chance to push back against some of the data that Rebecca will share. From there, we've got a former bishop charged with soliciting commercial sexual activity. We've got some, and I don't know what this is, but graphs about religion weighs in on Mormonism. So I'm interested to see what that is. I saw that up there. Arizona Supreme Court dismisses child sex abuse. That might be is that the same one as the one above RFM?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, it's a different case.
Gotcha.
But they're both my stories.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got more child sex abuse and sexual abuse stuff going on. So then we've got an LDS leader in Russia who is detained, and there's a lot going on with that story. LDS beauty queen stripped of title. Rebecca has that. And then I'll finish this off with, I think, an important story on new LDS Sunday school changes. And so with that, Mr. Radio Free Mormon, by the way, one more thing I did want to mention. There is a GoFundMe for Chandler Chuck Hendry. They're trying to raise $80,000. I don't know what that's going towards, but it looks like it's perhaps, I'm thinking maybe his wife, Anna Lynn, and of course their family, I assume at least in part to take care of the end-of-life cost for funeral and stuff. But they've raised $51,901. And so if anybody out there feels touched by that story and feels so inclined, you can go find the GoFundMe. Simply look up support for Anna Lynn and Chandler's family. So that's there. With that, Mr. Radio Free Mormon, take us into these amicus briefs. So the only reason I know amicus brief from the not Prop 8, but the family proclamation, proclamation to the world, and all that went into amicus briefs being filed on the church's part to sort of set the stage for that. And so when this came up, I know what an amicus brief is now.
Would it be terrible for me to give you a pop quiz and ask you to explain to the class what an amicus or amicus brief is?
I'd be happy to. So and correct me where I'm wrong, but thank you for putting me on the spot. But in a legal action being taken place, lawsuit, where there is an argument about some issue that affects other entities, those entities have a right in certain situations to file an amicus or amicus brief and be able to tell the court system, like, hey, I know these two parties are battling out over this issue, but this affects all of us too. And you get to say why you should have some say in how the case goes, because the decision will affect you as well.
Hey, I think that's great. Bravo. Bravo.
How do you pronounce it, though?
Your Juris Doctorate. What?
How do you pronounce it? That's what I want for my pop quiz, because I've heard it both ways, and I want to sound like I know what I'm talking about when I mention it.
Do you know how I say defendant, and it's really annoying instead of just defendant? I got that from an affectation from a law professor, okay? So they will say anything, any which way. It's not like, oh, there's one way that everybody says it.
But there should be a way. I mean, the emphasis is on the wrong syllable. It's either amicus or amicus.
That may be true. And you could maybe look it up while I'm doing the story. But
I'm going to do it right now.
If you find out, please let us know. Okay. So the two entities who are petitioning the court to file amicus briefs, I'll just say amicus, tomato, tomato, really, are the ACLU, who probably need little by way of introduction. That's the American Civil Liberties Union, and the EFF. And that one is the Electric Frontier Foundation. Now, I think they should call themselves the Electronic Frontier Foundation Union. So then they could be the ACLU and the FU. File amicus briefs in support of Mormon Stories podcast and free speech. I mean, what were they thinking? It's right there. They had it. This is from August 8th, 2026. So this is very recent. And this is what was put up on the Mormon Stories website about these two filings. So they're requesting the court at the same time as filing this. It's basically a proposed filing, but they're asking the court to allow them to file this as amicus with the court. And I think the court probably will. You know, I don't think it's outlandish for the ACLU or the Electronic Frontier Foundation to want to weigh in on this, or for the court to grant it for them. So I expect these will be granted and these will be considered by the court. And both of these, of course, are filing on behalf of the side that John Lynn and Mormon Stories are on, and the side that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is not on. So they have filed separate amicus curiae briefs on August 7th, 2026, U.S. District Court for Utah. Both urged the court to dismiss the trademark and copyright lawsuit brought by Intellectual Reserve, Inc. and the Mormon Church against the Open Stories Foundation and podcaster John P. DeLynn. The two organizations arrive at their conclusions from different doctrinal directions. EFF from the First Amendment test set out in Rogers versus Grimaldi, and the ACLU of Utah from trademark fair use. Both land in the same place. No institution, however rich or powerful, and I'm looking at you, Mormon Church, should be allowed to weaponize trademark law to determine who is permitted to use the word Mormon. Both briefs support defendants' pending motion to dismiss. Both ask the court to dismiss with prejudice. Now, the next part is highlighted and titled, Trademark Law Does Not Override the Public Right to Mention, Criticize, or Discuss. Do either of you have any comments on this part so far? Bill or Rebecca?
Nope, keep going. This is great.
Okay. The ACLU of Utah's brief opens by placing the church's claim alongside the speech that trademark law has long protected. This is a pretty good a paragraph, I think. To name a song mocking the Barbie doll, call it Barbie Girl. To name a movie about fictional dancers who imitate Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, call it Ginger and Fred. To comment on a company, start a website and call it company.com. But to name a podcast about Mormon stories, plaintiffs argue calling it Mormon Stories is unacceptable and prohibited by trademark law. So there's the argument by analogy. I'm presuming that those other things are fine. It goes on. Congress, courts, and the United States Constitution have all recognized that this kind of chokehold on language is an inappropriate weaponization of intellectual property law beyond its intended purpose. The brief continues. Trademark law does not override the public right to mention, criticize, or discuss. So in other words, trademark law being used as a club to beat to death free speech rights. The brief's central legal point is that the word never functioned as a brand in the first place. Mormon never functioned as a brand. The word Mormon is not a source identifier, it argues. It is a term that describes an entire ethno-religious culture, tradition, and people, many of whom are not members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. To make that case, the ACLU of Utah walks through the scholarly record. Any comments or questions from either of you on this part so far?
No, this all makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. So this is what they go through. The Journal of Mormon History. Now notice the word Mormon and Mormon history, right? Which is interpreted to encompass all traditions that trace their origins to Joseph Smith Jr. All traditions. Encyclopedia Britannica, which distinguishes the LDS Church from other Mormon churches, quote unquote, other Mormon churches. The 1844 succession crisis and the denominations it produced. The FLDS, Fundamentalist LDS, and Apostolic United Brethren, the polygamous offshoots, whose leaders affirmed that they call themselves fundamentalist Mormons. And this is a nice touch because they get to cite to a U.S. Supreme Court case. The U.S. Supreme Court, which in 1946 described FLDS petitioners as, quote, members of a Mormon sect known as fundamentalists. So they actually get to quote to a U.S. Supreme Court case for the definition they're proposing, comparing them to other Mormons. Turning to the podcast itself, the brief concludes that the title does what titles do: describe the work. It cites Mormon Stories podcast episodes on Alyssa Wall and Warren Jeffs and on a Mormon bishop's resignation as examples of content wherein Mormon is simply the most accurate word for the respective topics. And it borrows the Fourth Circuit's reasoning in Radiance Foundation versus NAACP, which I think is going to be next. Quote, it is not immediately apparent. This is a great line. It is not immediately apparent how someone would confuse a podcast, which is strongly critical of an organization, with the organization itself. They get to quote to a wonderful case, Radiance Foundation versus NAACP, for that proposition. It is not immediately apparent how someone would confuse a podcast. Of course, it was something else than a podcast. And when this was originally done, that's why it's in brackets. But the same reasoning applies, which is strongly critical of an organization with the organization itself. So how does someone confuse Mormon Stories as being for the church when it's obviously not? EFF. Oh, this is their lawsuit. The cost of the lawsuit is, this is a very important point, because what they're arguing is this needs to end now. This lawsuit needs to end now, which means this motion to dismiss needs to be granted, Judge, because to allow it to go on is to allow exactly what the church is trying to do with this lawsuit, which is to penalize and hopefully try and put John Dehlin and Mormon Stories out of business by ratcheting up the legal fees. So this is what they argue, and it's a good point. The EFF, an organization which has worked for more than 30 years on digital civil liberties and counts more than 30,000 members, argues that the Rogers test, that was that First Amendment test, the Rogers test exists precisely so that speakers without resources are not litigated into silence. Quote, individuals who use trademarks to critique their owners are regularly subject to legal threats they cannot afford to litigate. And that's even if they're using the trademarks, right? The brief puts numbers to this claim, citing the American Intellectual Property Law Association's 2025 economic survey. It notes that the median cost of litigating a trademark claim through trial and appeal runs between $250,000 to $1,100,000 per party, and between $100,000 and $375,000 to get merely through discovery and motion practice. Quoting the leading trade, and that's basically up to trial. Quoting the leading trademark treatise, faced with hugely expensive and lengthy litigation over vague standards, the recipient of a cease and desist letter will most often capitulate. EFF also points to a survey of trademark and copyright practitioners in which, quote, attorneys admitted to asserting trademark claims they believed were weak through demand letters, because it works, and to being more likely to take enforcement action against small-scale actors who would be unlikely to have the resources to resist even a weak claim. I think the church was expecting Dehlin to back down on this one. That is why EFF argues the timing of dismissal matters as much as the outcome, all right? So after citing all this evidence about how expensive it is and why it is that attorneys for petitioners, at least some, have stated that they do this kind of thing. That is why EFF argues the timing of dismissal matters as much as the outcome, because even allowing this case to proceed to discovery would burden defendants, that's John Dehlin, would burden John Dehlin's expression and chill others from speaking about a powerful cultural institution. Amicus urges the court to dismiss this case with prejudice. Now, surely you got something to say about that.
I just want to do this, right? I just want to clap. I'm just so glad that everybody realizes it's a bigger issue. It's a bigger issue than just Mormon Stories. And it has the potential to affect all kinds of people who are trying to, speak critically, as they have the right to and should, about any kind of organization. So I just want to clap my hands for the EFF and for the ACLU.
Even if Mormon Stories, or in any other legal situation where something similar has happened, even if the party being having the legal action filed against them for violating trademark, even in the instances where the legal standing is weak, there really isn't an argument. This is just a form of bullying. Even if you know you're going to lose, you've got $350 billion to spend. You've got another entity that's going to have exponentially less than that. And you can essentially, knowing you're even going to lose, you can fight them into bankruptcy essentially. And so I think it's such a big deal, one, that the Electronic Frontier Foundation as well as the ACLU got involved. I think that says a lot, by the way, that we're in this little tiny arena of Mormonism, and here the Electronic Frontier Foundation, which is at the forefront of protecting entities' rights in these instances, and the ACLU, which is a strong advocate for free speech and for making sure that certain principles of our country aren't violated. And the two of those entities getting involved and siding with DeLynn, I really do hope that the legal system throws this out and that the church stops playing this game going forward.
I do too. And I've got my money on it, by the way. And when we're talking about gambling, I'm going to want Rebecca to tell us a story later about using AI at the track to bet on the winners. Okay. Will you tell us that one later? I guess that's okay in Wyoming. So the next part says a generic word for a faith tradition. EFF's final section addresses the word directly, the word Mormon. Trademarks claims based on generic terms are especially offensive to First Amendment principles because they allow a single entity to control use of a common term for its common meaning. So the more general a term, the less likely it's going to be afforded trademark protections. And the stakes rise when a generic term refers to something as culturally significant as a religious tradition. Here, the term at issue, Mormon, is popularly understood to refer to a way of life that is common to many and owned by none. There is no other term that so accurately and precisely describes those who follow what they see as the teachings of the Book of Mormon, whether through the LDS Church or otherwise, or who are members of the broader community. Accordingly, locking up the term creates an improper barrier to criticism and commentary about the LDS Church, its doctrines, and even unaffiliated groups. I think the person who wrote this did a really great job.
Yeah.
Okay. EFF frames the present suit as part of a pattern. Hey, Bill, do you want me just to skip to the end of this part?
What do you mean?
Is this getting too long, do you think?
No, not at all. Keep going.
Okay. EFF frames the present suit as part of a pattern. Unfortunately, plaintiffs have a history of this kind of trademark abuse. And I see EFF has had cases against the church before, so they know whereof they speak. Unfortunately, the church is what it's saying, has a history of this kind of trademark abuse. The brief cites the church's 2016 threat against the Mormon Mental Health Association, a professional group of clinicians, educators, and advocates who work with church members, and the 2014 trademark claim against the dating site. Remember that one? In both of which EFF was involved. So they're telling the court, look, this isn't the first time the church is engaged in this kind of trademark bullying. Quoting a decision from the same district, the brief adds, quote, the Lanham Act regulates only economic, not ideological or political competition. And that is really what the church is trying to do. A word the church itself has discouraged. We all know how the church discouraged the word Mormon, and that's put in there as well. What the brief asks for? Well, it asks for this case to be dismissed immediately, so it does not continue on. Well, of course, it can be appealed by the church, even if it is dismissed, but not at least at this level, at the trial court level. It would have to be pursued on appeal. But at any rate, that's the most that the trial court judge could give them is dismissal. That's what they're asking for, and that is what I am predicting is going to happen. That's the end of the story. Any further thoughts from you? And back to you, Bill.
Rebecca, your thoughts first?
Yeah, that was my question, actually. If it is dismissed, as everybody's saying, it just needs to be dismissed, they then have the chance, the LDS Church, to appeal and still drag John DeLynn and more open stories back into it with an appeal.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. And I did look it up, and I know in the chat they're saying amicus is the Latin, but according to ChatGPT, it says the emphasis is on the first syllable and amicus. So I guess maybe you can just choose tomatoes, tomatoes.
Okay, well, let's call the whole thing off.
Let's call the whole thing off. That's right. So no, I'm just, again, just really thrilled to see other people, taking a look at this and seeing how egregious it is and realizing that it can have ramifications for a lot of different kind of entities and people. And so how much weight actually does an amicus or amicus brief have? I mean, I think you've talked about this before. Is it?
Well, I tell you what, a judge is probably going to do what a judge is going to do. There are times when a party brings up a novel argument that the judge would not have thought of otherwise, and it changes the judge's mind, and it's a remarkable thing when that happens, and wonderful. And maybe something that's raised in an amicus brief or an amicus brief or a tomato brief or a tomato brief will have that effect on the judge, and if so, wonderful.
Yeah. The other thing I'll just add in, I think in certain arenas, the general term used is really important. So, for instance, take the Mormon Mental Health Association. They're working with the Mormon community, not just Latter-day Saints. They're working with people who've been traumatized coming out of fundamentalist groups. They're working with various off groups of Mormonism. And so to be able to throw a term out that means a much larger umbrella of people, and that term is what people are going to get help through. They're going to be able to have access to resources, be able to get certain things with their well-being, whether it be health services, mental health services. It is so important that we protect terms generally in situations like this, because it's more than just one group fighting against another about the use of a word. It's the term by which the entire general population, both believers in any of the Mormon groups, the ex-Mormons of any of those, because I think some fundamentalists I've heard refer to themselves as ex-Mormon as well, and also the non-believers who need to be able to have access to the conversation around Mormonism at large. And so, for instance, when we recently had discussions about are Mormons Christian, that some of that was coming up again in the news. I don't think they just mean the Latter-day Saints. They mean any tradition flowing out of Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon. And hence all of the general public is trying to reach the arena of Mormonism and discussion and providing services for more than just the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so to me, it seems so cut and dry that this isn't just a church, LDS Church owned term. This is the term by which the entire world interacts with the Joseph Smith Book of Mormon tradition.
And it is interesting, and I hope that the judge sees it this way. I haven't seen anybody put it quite this punchily yet, although these amicus or amicus curiae briefs, these friend of the court briefs, okay, I'll translate it, do have a lot of punch to them. I like them. But the thing I'm thinking is, really, I think the way this could be framed, the church is making a religious power play in this argument. And what it's saying is, we are the one and only true Mormon church, and we are the only ones who get to use that name, and no other restorationist church gets to. And that's really what they're asking the judge to do, in addition to get John Dehlin.
Yeah. Well, thank you, RFM. Thank you for bringing that story forward and for talking about that, because this is going to unfold here, and we'll keep bringing you updates as the story continues to have some twists and turns to it. I think the next thing that happens, right, is that the LDS Church has some time left, but not too much, to issue a response to John's response to their lawsuit, the Mormon Story's response to their lawsuit. And we should be hearing from that or seeing that soon.
It's called a reply. That it's just called, the motion, response, and reply. But my understanding, or my expectation, I should say, is between the parties, they're probably already agreed to extend that beyond the normal limits, like it was, I think, for this answer to be filed. And I could be wrong about that, but it's taking a bit longer. It's a complex case, and frequently the parties don't necessarily have to go to the judge. If they can agree to something between themselves, why bother the judge? And it's not unreasonable to ask for longer than maybe it would normally take. And so if the parties can agree to that, great. They submit it to the court, and then they go by those deadlines. It's probably not until October that reply is going to be done by the church. At least that's my understanding, and it could be wrong.
All right.
Oh, what was that comment that was up there? Someone saying they were a trademark attorney?
Yeah.
Ms. Molson? I'm a trademark attorney, and the use of Mormon in this case appears to be very defensible case of nominative fair use. Okay. Fair use of the name.
Yeah.
All right. Great.
All right. Anything else on that story?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll move on. The next is a segment of stories, 3 stories in total that has to do with LDS disaffection. The first 2 parts of this, Rebecca Biblioteca, take us into that.
Yeah, and this is the graphs about religion that you were so curious about. They're the same story. So this is an organization, a person actually. This is Ryan Berge. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Or maybe Ryan is a political science, a religion researcher, and he specializes in demographics of religion in the United States. And I have friends who follow this. They track all kinds of different religious data and information. And my friend said, yeah, I was really surprised that they're going to do LDS because in the past they had said there's not enough data. But as we all know, because we've covered it extensively on the newscast in the last year, maybe 2 years, there has been a lot of data coming out. There have been a lot of surveys, a lot of graphs that we've shown here to talk about what the heck is going on within the Brighamite LDS Church. I will say Brighamite because referring to our last story, there are many other, versions of Mormonism that call themselves Mormon and are not what we're talking about here tonight. So I am not going to go into all the graphs. We've gone into a lot of them before. I'm kind of paint a little bit of a broad stroke view of what they're saying here on graphs about religion. But if you haven't ever discovered this platform, go and look. It is absolutely fascinating. And they have some things to say about what they're noticing in Mormonism and the big studies that have come out recently. So let me go to the next slide here. Here we go. The LDS Church has a retention problem. This is kind of when you synthesize all these graphs, this is what it boils down to. And we've touched on this many times here on the newscast, or at least that's the argument made in a recent article from Graphs About Religion. Rather than focusing on how many people are joining the church, now who does that, right? Who focuses on the joining? The church itself does, right? Look at all our missionaries, look at all our baptisms in Africa. They focus on who's joining. But according to Graphs About Religion, this is not the secret sauce. They say, rather than focusing on how many people are joining the church, the article asks a different question. How many people who were raised Latter-day Saints are actually staying? And according to the author, that's where the real challenge lies. And I think we have touched on this before, that it really is retention. That is what we're seeing. Those are the numbers that we're crunching. Any comments very quickly on retention, either of you, before we move forward?
No, not here.
I just think it's interesting that lots of people from lots of different directions are noticing this. Here again is this outside source. You have so many inside sources. Widow's Mite, for instance, Jana Reese, which you'll go into in a minute. There's so many inside sources, so many outside sources. There's only one source who's saying there's not a problem here. And maybe even that gives some leeway later tonight. So anyway.
Yeah, it's getting harder and harder to overlook it. And so then you just start spinning it. And that's what you're going to talk about, Bill. That's going to be a great segment. So let's see. Let me go forward. Here we go. The article looks at several large national surveys that we've covered all of these over the last year and a half that asked Americans how they currently identify religiously. Instead of relying on official church membership records, these surveys measure whether people still consider themselves Latter-day Saints as adults. And while the exact numbers vary from survey to survey, the overall trend is remarkably consistent. So according to Graphs About Religion, older generations who were raised in the church tended to remain Latter-day Saints at much higher rates, often around 70 to 80%. So those of us that are older and stepped away, we're kind of bucking the system because usually people that are raised in it decade after decade, they're staying in. And I can certainly understand that. However, among younger generations, especially millennials and Gen Z, retention appears to have dropped substantially. Depending on the survey, and again, we're talking about several big ones that have come out in the last little while, only about 40 to 55% of those raised LDS still identify that way as an adult. And this is huge because the point is, it doesn't matter how many converts you get. That really doesn't matter. You're going to have retention problems there too. And we've heard those numbers and they're not great. But even people that were raised in it and get to be in their, late 20s, 30s, we're talking 40 to 55% may be stepping away. And that, that is a crumbling empire right there. That's not sustainable. So the article argues that this isn't simply a matter of a few converts. Instead, it suggests the church's biggest demographic challenge is keeping the people that you already have. And I don't really see them addressing that very much. In fact, some of the other things we're going to cover tonight are things where they're making it more and more miserable to attend church. They're taking away things like community, things that do keep retention numbers up, and making it maybe all that easier to walk away. The author also points out an important distinction between church membership records and survey results. The church reports the number of people in its membership rolls, but national surveys ask people directly how they identify today. And those are two very different measurements. And survey totals for self-identified Latter-day Saints are much, much lower than official membership figures. We know that. Another key point is that it isn't based on just one survey. The author compares multiple independent studies conducted over several years. And while the percentages are different, they all point to the same direction. Retention among the younger generation has completely declined. Of course, it's important to recognize that not everybody interprets these numbers the same way. And Bill's going to touch on this too. Researchers at BYU have argued that although retention has declined, active Latter-day Saints still have some of the highest levels of religious participation among major faith groups in the United States. So we may not have as many, but gosh darn it, those that are staying, they're locked in, right? They're completely faithful. I don't know how else to read that. What?
Compared to those apostate churches, we're going gangbusters.
That's right. We are ready. We're doing it. They also note how you define retention can significantly affect the conclusions you reach. And it's true. As with any data, there's going to be different ways to spin it. So the debate isn't really over whether some decline has occurred. It's more about how large the decline is and how it's measured and what it means for the future. The final statement here, one thing that both sides generally agree on is that retention matters. Long-term growth isn't just about baptizing new members. That's not going to work. If you look forward, that is not going to work. It's also about whether people raised in the faith continue to identify with it and participate through their lives. And I included this picture here because we've talked about this before. Every time you see a picture of a baptism in Africa, it is the youth. These are kids that are being baptized. And I really can't predict the retention rate here, but I really don't think it's going to be anything substantial that is going to slow those numbers of members who have been in forever dropping off. And we've seen those graphs where the people that have been in the church for so long are the ones leaving. It's not like I didn't know anything about it. I just left. You knew everything about it and you left. So that's the end of the segment on the graphs about religion. Bill and RFM, what are your thoughts on this? The idea of retention. No way that that's going to make up for, or no way that converts are going to make up for retention.
Yeah. Again, you go back in time, 70, 80, 90% of people stayed. Yep. Today, 40 to 55%, as you told us. I can guarantee it's less than 40 to 55% with all of those kids from Africa. It's not that high. And the other thing I was thinking about is, when you think about why the problem is really a big deal, and you see Mormonism making tons of changes, we'll get into that at the end of tonight's newscast, talking about the new Sunday school curriculum. And I've watched all the training videos, and I'll share some of the thoughts that David Bednar and Patrick Huron share in that, among others. But when you have 40 to 55% of people who stay into adulthood in the LDS Church, some of them marry believers and some of them marry non-believers, right? So maybe the non-believers, the ones that marry non-believers, of the 40 to 55 who stay, end up not having an active family. They have children. Children are in a mixed faith marriage. They perhaps don't go. Even of the 40 to 55% who marry another believer, we already know, again, kids, the younger generation, at best, 40 to 55% stay. So even of the kids, some of them, more than half, perhaps, step away from the faith. It's compounded by the problem that Mormons don't have the number of kids that they used to. So Mormons in the United States, for instance, I don't know what they were averaging, 5.3 or something higher than 1.3 that the American couple is having today. Well, even Mormons today are much more in line with the national figure than having the amount of children that Mormons had in the 1970s, the 1980s, or even the 1990s. And so Mormonism, or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in this instance, is dealing not only with people not staying at the same percentage that they used to, but there aren't even the same number of the next generation of children per household that there used to be. Now you take that problem out a couple of generations, and what you have is a severely declining church in terms of active, faithful members. And I'll say one last thing. We already know, again, based on Jeff Strong's data, that even of the 40 to 55% who stay, 1/3 of them are sitting in the pews, not buying into the one true church anyway.
Yep. RFM, thoughts?
Well, at least we know the answer to the parable in the New Testament about the shepherd who left the 99 and went in search of the one lamb or sheep. Remember that one? We hear about that a lot, but we never stop to think, what happened to those 99 sheep that he left behind? Well, apparently they scatter. That's what happens. This reminds me, though, of the statistic that Jeff Strong teaches us, and I think needs to be repeated, if only that I can remember it because it's such a significant statistic, that in the past 25 years, 40% of the active membership of the church, in the past 25 years, 40% of the active membership of the church has left.
Yeah.
That's stunning.
Yeah. And I think that's why we've seen so many articles pushing back on Jeff Strong's data, right? We've seen an awful lot of people trying to make the case for, don't pay any attention to that. So I did see a headline just as I was logging on. I need to look at it some more, saying that marriage rates at BYU are declining. That goes right along with what you were saying, Bill. Not getting married. If you do, maybe having one child, maybe two. And I see that anecdotally with young adults, my children's age. They're not having kids right away. And when they do, one, and they say, I think that may be it. So it is a different day for Mormonism. So, and let's talk, if we can go to our next set quickly here, about women in the church, because a lot of this data breaks out what is happening to women in the church. And this is the wonderful Jana Reese, in the Religion News Service, and then in the Salt Lake Tribune. She has an article, Why Are So Many Young Women Leaving Mormonism? And again, this is a national trend. Young women are leaving religion at higher rates than men for the first time. But she starts the article by saying this study from BYU calls attention to two clear trends in the church. First, Mormons are succeeding in a lot of ways. We pray more, we attend church more, we report being happier than most Americans. Okay, I have my opinion on that, why they pray more, attend church more. It's a little bit coercive, isn't it? But the other trend the article notes is that markedly few people are staying in the church. We're keeping about half, and that's a big drop from what it used to be. We kept about 8 in 10 childhood members back in the 80s. Not happening anymore. And what's the biggest bombshell? Jana says women are now more likely to leave than men, especially if they're younger. And why would this be? I thought Jana did a great job here of kind of just getting right to the point. The key statistic is that we're going to pay attention that more than half of young adult women who were raised Latter-day Saint have now left the faith. Here in Utah, I don't see that so much. I rode my commuter train today with 4 female sister missionaries, and they were having a great time sitting behind me. Obviously, they didn't recognize me. They were laughing and talking about the scriptures, and they were having a great time. So lots of girls still going on missions. But Jana points out that there are the 3 Ps, why women tend to step away. And I thought these were great. Politics is the first one. Young women are on average more politically liberal than previous generations, as the church has become associated in many people's minds with conservative politics, especially on issues such as LGBTQ rights and gender roles. Some women feel increasingly out of step with the institution. We've talked about this before. They're stepping away because what they're hearing at church, what they're asked to espouse at church, is not matching how they feel inside, especially when it comes to their politics. What's the next P? I'm sure we could all guess this: purity culture. Jana argues that many young women reject teachings and cultural expectations surrounding modesty, chastity, and sexual behavior. They say these messages often place a disproportionate burden on women. For example, statements from our prophet that women are walking pornography, right? And they can leave them feeling judged or responsible for men's behavior, not just feeling that way. You're told that in the LDS Church, at least a certain generation we were, and they're just not going to have that anymore. And I also think in the back of their mind, with all these P's that we're going through, they're thinking of their own daughters. They're not going to raise their daughters or even their sons in this kind of a system that teaches this kind of rhetoric. The final one Jana points to is powerlessness. I thought this was a very, very astute observation. The article contends that many women become frustrated by the church's male-only priesthood and governance structure. It argues that women have limited authority in decision-making, despite contributing heavily to congregational life, leading some to feel their voices carry less weight. And nowhere else in their lives, for the most part, are they powerless. They can be a CEO. They can be in charge of managing multiple men. It's only when they go to church and take their daughters to church that they have to recede and they're relegated, and they're just not going to do it anymore. Any thoughts on the 3 Ps before we finish up here?
RFM?
Yes, Jana Reese wrote this.
Uh-huh.
Is she not aware that the church is saying that young women are not leaving the church, that actually the church is growing faster than it's ever grown in its entire history? How does Jana Reese not know this?
Yeah, I think she follows the data. I think she does know it. And as Bill's going to talk about in a minute here, there are ways that you can spin it so that even when people are leaving, they're not really leaving. Or what does leaving mean even? So there are ways to spin it.
You got here the politics, the powerlessness. Oh, purity culture was the other one. It's again, there's been no other time in the church's history, far as I know, where active men have outnumbered active women. That to me seems like such a big deal. And I think, I don't have any data to back this up, but I think if you have an active man marrying a non-Mormon, again, if you have an offset, you have less active women in the church, or at least the women again are leaving in greater numbers, but they're, regardless of whether it's one way or the other, there's an offset. And if you have an offset of more faithful women than faithful men, I have a hunch that when that woman marries a non-member, she has more say about whether the kids get raised in the church or not. That the husband will more often defer to the wife to have control of the religious upbringing of the children. Well, we are entering a phase now where the faithful men are staying, and if not yet, certainly at some point outnumber the faithful women. If that happens, even if those men have got to marry somebody, the ones that don't have a faithful woman to marry, because there's more of them, they'll end up marrying somebody, and that'll be a non-believing woman, and she'll have the greater say about the religious upbringing of those children. So I think this is a problem the church doesn't want. It's always going to have an offset. There's always going to be either more men or more women. In the perfect world, the church would like that to be equal. But I have a hunch the church would much rather have more faithful women in the church than faithful men. And I don't think it likes where the data is heading.
No, this is very different, isn't it? We've always had more women, right? That's why we had polygamy. We had all those widows, right? No, this is going to be really interesting to watch this unfold. And just a couple quick points, reasons for this: the 3 Ps, the women being aware and stepping away. The internet, access to information, gender equality everywhere else, and for the most part, school, out in the world, and not at church, and then educational and career opportunities. It's interesting. Yeah, those of you that are my age, you know how it was, right? I'm so happy to see younger women just, the world is their oyster. They can do what they want. There's no thought that, well, I better just pick a career that'll match, go along with me being a mother. That's not in their head. The world is their oyster. They can do what they want. And so final conclusion here, and I have a picture of a goddess, right? Feminine, divine. Rather than attributing the trend to a single issue, the author, Jana Reese, argues that it reflects the combined effects of political differences, dissatisfaction with purity culture, and frustration over women's lack of institutional authority. They suggest that the factors together help explain why young LDS women are increasingly disaffecting from the church. But not everyone thinks that, do they, Bill? Your next segment is going to tell us that maybe this information is not quite correct, or we're not looking at it right.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, I'll just say, any final thoughts from you, RFM, on the
No,
past story? Okay, I'll jump into it
thanks,
then.
so.
This to me seems just so clearly to be pushback against the story by Jana Reese that you just went into, Rebecca. This was from the Deseret News. It's an opinion piece. It was titled, "LDS Women Are Happier Than Most, So Why Are More Young Women Struggling?" Now, by the way, I just want to note, the Deseret News
Mhm.
allowed this opinion author, regardless of where she goes with her argument, to acknowledge that the data is right, that more women are leaving the LDS Church than ever before. That to me was interesting. The church, in the
Yeah.
midst of saying there's tons of growth everywhere, again, it's not that they're just claiming they're growing in Africa. They have been on the record claiming we are growing in every geographic area of the church.
Yes.
Well, they allowed this opinion piece in the Deseret News to acknowledge that the retention among millennial LDS women is declining. So here was a sort of a synopsis of that article. In a Deseret News opinion piece, BYU religion professor, so this isn't just a nobody
Mhm.
writing into the newspaper. This is the voices that the church wants putting in an opinion piece. BYU religion professor Barbara Morgan Gardner addresses an interesting observation in recent research. Again, going back to what Jana just told us with that you shared, Rebecca, namely that Latter-day Saint women report unusually high levels of happiness, peace, and well-being. Yet, retention among millennial LDS women is declining.
You know why that is?
Why is that, RFM?
Because they're lying
Right, which
about being happy, obviously.
it's what all of us Mormons did when the system told us to do it. We go to our neighbors and present our happy family. We go into church and we smile and don't say anything about our problems at home. Uh, we all in Mormonism know the game of pretending and wearing a mask. And so I think you nailed it. I think that's 100% true. Now, one may wonder, when they're no longer being retained by the church, if they're even happier. I'd like to see that study.
I would say that this study actually stands for the proposition that Mormons, or at least young women here, probably more than just young women, will actually lie and misreport the levels of happiness much higher than they actually are.
How could you be both happier, having more peace and more well-being, and walking right out the back door and exiting the church? Yes.
Mhm.
So
I'm so
Gardner,
happy I have to leave. That's what it is. I'm just so happy. I have to just go.
yes. Gardner argues that critics may be looking in the wrong place, that Jana Reese may be looking in the wrong place when they attribute that decline primarily to problems within the church. Her central argument is that the church's foundational doctrines and structure have remained relatively stable while the surrounding culture has changed dramatically. Now, she wants it to be like, hey, the church isn't changed, the world's changed, and women somehow are being manipulated by the world to leave. Now, what I would say is that you can look at it that way if you want to, but there's the complete other side of the coin to look at, which is the church may have remained in large parts the same, but as the world changes, women are given safer spaces, more time to think and process what's going on inside of them, and to recognize that what the church asks of them is not in line with their well-being, their happiness, or their peace. Just FYI. Okay.
And yet they will report that they are happier than they actually are.
Yes. But didn't we all? Didn't we
Because,
all?
because they know the equal sign is with happiness and righteousness.
Exactly.
If you do what the Mormon church tells you to do, you will be happy to that direct proportion, right? So are you happy? Yes, I am, because I'm a Mormon. I got the true church, and I'll be seeing you later because I'm sneaking out the back.
And it's your fault if you're not happy. That's a
Yes.
huge motivator to say, I'm completely happy, right? Who wants that blame? If you admit to yourself even that you're miserable, you've done something wrong.
This whole article sounds like it's blaming anybody but the church.
Yeah. How many of us had nightmare Sunday mornings getting up, mom's getting the kids ready, dad's getting the kids ready, mom and dad are arguing over getting the kids ready. It is an absolute disaster. It's yelling, it's screaming, it's so frustrating. Everybody is so upset and nobody wants to go to church. And what do? You walk through the door, mom and dad say, put a smile on your face, pretend like nothing happened at home. We're all going to just pretend like we are the happiest people here. And they do, because the rest of us are sitting in the pews and going, everybody looks happy. Everybody looks good. And then 2 weeks later, Sister Jones and Brother Jones file for divorce. And you're like, I didn't see that coming. All I ever saw was a happy family. In Mormonism, you never get to see what's going on in the personal lives of people. And they have been taught from the time they were a child to put the smile on their face. And so, yes, I think RFM, Rebecca, you guys are hitting it on the head. Millennials, the article continues with the point that millennials have grown up in a culture increasingly skeptical of institutions and authority, suspicious of claims to absolute truth, protective of individual autonomy and authenticity, and less inclined to see inherited traditions as inherently valuable. By the way, to the author of this piece, they're not inherently valuable if it's abusive authority that's being asked to be trusted, if it has claims of absolute truth where there are tons of contradictions to such, where it's not protective of individual autonomy and authenticity. Of course, nobody's going to respect those traditions that cause harm in those ways. So social media, she argues, amplifies those attitudes, particularly among young women. Gardner sees this cultural shift as increasingly incompatible with a religion that emphasizes profits, absolute truth, obedience, sacrifice, covenant relationships, community, and traditional family structures. I think I just threw up a little bit in my mouth. She does acknowledge, though, that the church is imperfect, including Dallin Oak's recent admission that it has not always wisely utilized women's abilities. By the way, it probably still doesn't, and argues that older members should listen seriously to young women's ideas for improvement. Right. Elder Ballard said, talk, but don't talk too much, and please put a little lipstick on. But her ultimate diagnosis remains external. This is, again, Gardner's thought. She suggests younger women may be abandoning an institution associated with unusually high well-being because they have absorbed a secular millennial zeitgeist, emphasizing individualism, skepticism, and autonomy. So these women, Gardner would like you to believe, these women go to church every week, happy and their well-being, and they're feeling so much peace, and they don't want to be there. Isn't it more likely they don't want to be there because deep down they're really not happy?
I think the lying theory is a lot simpler.
It is. It requires a lot less conjecture. As John Dehlin would say, it crosses Occam's razor, and it isn't the most rational perspective or conclusion to take. Now, she closes with a memorable metaphor. We've had the dilapidated dinghy. We've had, stay on the cruise ship. Don't get off the boat. Perhaps instead of blaming the pool in lifeguards, the church and its leaders, AKA church and leaders, we instead ought to examine the cultural and political philosophies in which these young women are increasingly drowning.
I think that's a good idea. Man, that was close. I thought we were going to we almost gave a little responsibility to the leaders of the church for the shit that goes on.
Yes. Nope. Can't do that, can we? So one of the quotes from the article that she says, perhaps instead of blaming the pool in the lifeguards, the church and its leaders, we ought to examine the cultural and political philosophies in which young men are increasingly drowning. Even if the church is like Alcatraz and its leaders are like Darth Vader, you will stay. By the way, a reminder to I want to get to your point real quick, Arpa, but I just want to remind the audience, we just did an early newscast a few days ago on Elder Lawrence Corbridge's comments that if the church were like Alcatraz, and if the local leaders, but I'll say church leaders in general, were like Darth Vader, that members, you will stay We covered that. And so if you want to connect with that, it also ties into these stories that Rebecca and I have shared. RFM, your thoughts?
That's what they said to everybody checked into Alcatraz too. You will stay.
We'll stay. They did.
The other thing I can't remember, maybe it'll come back to me. Rebecca?
I just think this rhetoric is going to go on, and it's going to become louder and louder because now there are so many other voices telling everybody no one is staying, right? So they have to address it. They have to say, okay, whatever. Yes, no one's staying, but you will stay, or they're leaving for the wrong reasons. You are happy. I think maybe that's the next video, right? You are happy, looking right at the camera. So
Yes.
I'm kind of excited to see what else they're going to say, because it's impossible to ignore these studies, even from the faithful side. You know, they try to explain it away, but that data is there if you're looking for it.
What I know is that I'm going to spend the rest of the night trying to get the image out of my mind of Elder David Bednar in a red Speedo sitting in one of those lifeguard towers next to the pool.
He's no David Hasselhoff, is he?
Do you want me to make that right now? I'll work on it while we're.
Put that in the slideshow. We'll put that up.
I'm going to make it right now.
Mm.
It is strange, right? Like, no one can. Again, Jeff Strong did this. I don't remember what exactly the quote was, but he was basically saying that sometimes some members come up with ineffective reasons why people leave. And I'm thinking, no, they're repeating what the leaders tell them. And same with that. In this instance, Gardner can't hold the leaders responsible. Nobody's allowed to. Nobody can put an opinion piece in the Deseret News where they blame leadership for anything. And so she can quote Elder Oaks saying that that we haven't always utilized young women or women the way we could, but that's as far as she can go, is the exact thing that a leader has said. You can't go beyond that. RFM, your thoughts?
I'm sorry. It just occurs to me that with this whole injunction, you can't criticize leaders and they never do anything wrong. Not only are the leaders doctrinally inerrant, they're also morally immaculate. They can do no wrong. They will admit to the theoretical possibility of their doing wrong, but they will never, ever allow to be criticized or take responsibility for doing anything wrong. I think they're immaculate as well as inerrant.
Yeah. And in a world that has a degree of patriarchy, and over the last decade or two, women have been pushing against that and making progress, creating shifts in movement. The women of the church live in that same world too. And they see that they don't have to be what the men tell them they have to be. And of course, it's going to carry over to the church. Why wouldn't women in larger numbers treasure their individualism and autonomy? Why wouldn't they prize their authenticity and the chance to show up just exactly as they are and not try to fit into a tiny box that Mormonism demands of them? And then you add on top of that all of the unhealthiness of leaders and all the nonsense that happens in the church, local and general. And it's no wonder why women are walking away. So that's the end of my story. I'll happy to get any final thoughts from you. Otherwise, we can set this disaffection aside. But again, there's only one source telling you that everybody's fine, everybody's happy, church is growing like crazy, and every other arrow is telling you that's not the truth.
Well, it's the guys who can't make mistakes that are telling us it's growing, so it must be true.
And I have one more thought. Why in the world would a woman stay when they won't even let you sit on the freaking stand? I mean, seriously, to come out with an actual policy and say it out loud. Oh no. Why in the world would you stay?
There was a saying back in the Vietnam War I heard. I wasn't actually in Nam, but I was alive at the time. It was about, what if they threw a war and nobody came? Have you ever heard of that? And this is making me think of, what if the guys put together a patriarchal church and none of the women came, or all the women left? I mean, what do they have now? They've got an entire institution that's designed to do something that it can't do anymore because the people it's supposed to subjugate said, no, thanks.
Well, on paper, they don't need the women. Remember how they reorganized and put out the information on what it takes and who it takes to run a ward? There were no women listed at all. They were all
It's true. And once
functions.
again, that's the man's megalomania, because everybody in the church knows the dirty secret. Okay, everybody out there, if you If you're a Mormon, you know this is true. If you don't, you may be shocked by this, but everybody in the Mormon church understands that the women do all the work
Mhm.
and the men take the credit
Yep.
because they preside. Everybody understands this. The men understand this. The women understand it. The boys understand it. Believe me, because they put all their stuff off on the young women who do it and make it happen, right? We all know how it goes. So I'm just going to say that theoretically, that may be right, but practically, no. If you got the more women leave, the more this the wheels are going to come off this red wagon called the LDS Church.
Why would strong women stay in a church where a 12-year-old boy in the tip of his pinky
11.
has more power and authority than his mother, right? Than his sister, than his grandmother, than the other Relief Society president? It's absurd. And so while the church has been tossing out the LGBT folks, it's the women who are tossing the church out. And that leads us to where maybe Arizona tossed out something as well.
Oh my gosh. You're going to have to teach classes in segueing from one topic to another. It'll be a college course. Bill, you're getting so good at that. Yeah, we talked about this would be Colby Reddish and I, my esteemed co-counsel. Arizona tosses case. This was the Arizona Supreme Court. We did a 2-hour and 45-minute episode on this that aired Saturday night. It's available for those of you who want to get all the details. I'm just going to give you the overview, which is in 3 slides, which I hammered out earlier today based upon the fact that we both read this thoroughly and podcasted about it. And this is the 20,000 foot overview. Factual history of this case, you may remember it. Young children abused by their father. Father confesses to his bishop in Bisbee, Arizona. Bishop calls church hotline. By the way, if I were briefing this case for law school, this is probably what it would look like, okay? The factual history. Bishop calls church hotline and is told the law forbids bishop from calling police, even though the statute actually gives the option to the bishop to contact police, rut-row, and further says that any good faith contacting of police is a defense to a lawsuit. That's what the statute says. The bishop does not contact the police. The abuse continues for years. Finally, law enforcement catches and prosecutes father in spite of fact church kept it quiet. Now the children bring a lawsuit against the LDS Church for not reporting. Procedural history, because it just got tossed by the Arizona Supreme Court. This is how it got there. The lawsuit is dismissed at the trial court level. The trial court holds, 1, there is a mandatory reporting statute in Arizona. There is. 2, there is a clergy exemption for the reporting statute. There is. 3, the bishops are able to claim the clergy exemption that gives them the right to not report. And 4, the case is dismissed on summary judgment without going to trial. The case is then appealed to the Court of Appeals, obviously by the plaintiffs, which reverses the trial court and holds that there are genuine issues of material fact that must be litigated by a jury or decided by a jury, such as the definition of certain statutory terms in the law. The case is then appealed to the Arizona Supreme Court by the church, obviously, which reverses the Court of Appeals, holding that dismissal on summary judgment is proper. That's why it got tossed. Holdings, similar to the trial court's holdings, but this point is key. This is the last slide. There are several terms in the clergy exemption statute, that must be defined in such a way as to have it apply to the LDS bishops. Defined another way, the clergy exemption might not apply to the LDS bishops. The question is, who gets to define these terms? The holding is that it is the church that gets to define any terms that could be called doctrinal or religious in nature. Naturally, the church defines the terms in such a way as to make the clergy exemption apply to the LDS bishops. The court can't define the terms for the church, or that would be the government imposing itself on the church. Nor can the government argue with the church as to what those terms mean for the same reason. That's why the court says it cannot look behind the church's definitions. Therefore, the church gets to define the terms, even though that means giving the fox the keys to the hen house in this particular case. Discussion.
I'll just say this reminds me a little bit of the steeple, completely different issue, but really it is the religion that gets to impose on the rest of society what their God has told them things need to be. And so when there's a conflict about the city saying the steeple can only be this high, and the Mormon church goes, well, God told us that he wants it to be 400 feet in the air, it really is up to this point, as the government has had to deal with this issue, and it's never really worked its way all the way to the Supreme Court specifically on that. But in these instances where it gets some pushback, there is this sort of recognition that religion gets to be the deciding factor of what the religion wants and whether that is appropriate for the religion to have. It gets to be the judge, jury, and executioner, essentially.
Yeah, I agree. There's no power like the power of religion. I will say that. And in my opinion, it becomes more and more unchecked. And even a governmental system, a political system, I think they realize they can use the power of religion. They can move people. They can move the masses by harnessing that power. Nobody's going to take any steps otherwise. So I know it's a tightrope. It's a fine line. And I understand in theory what's happening here. But then just a regular person says, what do you mean? Somebody told somebody that something bad is happening to kids. Why wasn't that fixed? You know what I mean? But no, it's bigger than that. It's beyond that. And I think that's the frustration that everyone has.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
so once again, if you want any more details on that, go ahead and listen to that podcast. We go into detail.
Yeah. You and Colby, Arizona tosses Case, the Mormon Legal Eagles. All right. So an episode of RFM. So go check that out. Our next one is about a Mormon beauty queen. And what went on here? This one got to be quite a bit of drama.
Yeah, you know, it did. And I posted about this very early on when it was just starting. And I had this pushback. Oh, it must have been a slow day over at Mormonish. You know, this is nothing. And I'm like, oh, yeah, watch this blow up, which it did. So I'm always right. So the headline here is Miss North Carolina hits back after she was stripped of her title over racist posts as she claims her religious beliefs made her a target. This is why it's interesting to Mormonism. There she is, Brittany Boltonhouse, and she was crowned Miss North Carolina. Even though she's married, you can be married and I guess be in the pageant. And so she's Mrs. North Carolina, I guess, back in June and headed at the end of this month, supposedly to the Miss USA pageant. I don't know if you guys watch beauty pageants. I used to watch them when I was a kid, really liked them. But anyway, there she is. And it says Brittany Boltonhouse, who was recently crowned Miss North Carolina 2026, has been stripped of her title after controversial old social media posts attributed to her resurfaced online. I have looked at these posts. I'm not including them here. They were from when she was 19, 20-ish. And as it says here, the posts reportedly dating from 2017 to 19 include repeated use of the N-word. Boltonhouse has responded by acknowledging mistakes in her past while arguing that they don't represent who she is today. Now, as I said, I've read the posts, and the N-word is used more in a, I don't know, how can I say it? Like calling out to somebody like, hey there, you know, kind of a thing. Also, the F word used a lot. Also, a lot of transphobic, homophobic, other racial things in these posts. So the pageant is saying, no, we're not having any of that. She's saying something different. So there's also an interesting Mormon angle to this story. Boltonhouse is a Latter-day Saint who has publicly promoted her faith on social media. A lot of people, when I posted about it, asked me, how do you know she's LDS? Prove she's LDS. Well, I don't think you get much more proof than this. In 2024, she was also a featured speaker at the Book of Mormon Evidence Conference. I had to really look long and hard to find this, but there she is right in the middle on the bottom row wearing black. She is a speaker at the Book of Mormon Evidence Conference.
Rebecca, I got to interrupt you just to say something.
Yes.
You are amazing.
No, I'm just super nosy.
And where is she? She's at the bottom row. Is that right in the middle?
Right in the middle. Right in the middle on the
black.
bottom. Brittany Boltonhouse.
Two from the left of Shane Baldwin.
Yep.
Got it.
Yeah, there she is. So right in the middle. And she's going to talk on latter-day influencing. But now Boltonhouse says she believes her conservative political views, maybe her Latter-day Saint views, And her Mormon faith may have contributed to the decision to remove her as Miss North Carolina.
She is
So
the victim here, damn it.
Yeah, exactly. So she's saying it's not these posts, which are there for everybody to read, spells it right out, not these posts, but it's actually just her views and her Christian faith and, you know, the views that her Christian faith encourage her to hold. So it's kind of an interesting scenario. This next slide is her bio on the Book of Mormon Evidences Conference. Anybody can freeze on that and read it. But yeah, she was very actively LDS. And she talks about being LDS. Mostly she talks about herself being a Christian woman. And that's kind of her defense here. Now, pageant officials strongly deny that it's based on her religious convictions and her being a Christian woman. They say that religion and politics had nothing to do with the decision and that Bolton House was removed after review of her past behavior and public content. Again, back to those social media posts. They're there in black and white. They don't lie. Bolton House has responded in explicitly religious terms, talking about forgiveness, personal growth, her Christian faith. She says she has grace and a lot of love for the pageant officials and that she forgives them. Kind of. We're going to talk about how she's going to get a lawyer. That's
sure that will help
breaking
them
today.
sleep at night. Yeah.
I know. Again, all right. So two different explanations being offered. The pageant officials say it's about standards of conduct and discriminatory language. Bolton House believes that her conservative views and Latter-day Saint identity may have played a role in getting her stripped of her title.
Absolutely. That's what
yeah.
it was.
That's what it was. And just today, as I was making sure there were no updates, and there was an update, dethroned Miss North Carolina USA Brittany Bolton House is fighting to get her crown back. Bolton House, who was stripped of her Miss North Carolina 2026 title last week, says she's launching a legal challenge against the pageant organization. So she has lawyered up. Her attorneys argue that the pageant officials never gave her a specific reason for the decision that she lost her crown and failed to provide her with basic fairness, transparency, and an opportunity to defend herself. So she's definitely going after the organization with her lawyers. Miss USA officials have said that the decision followed a review of conduct over an extended period of time and emphasized the organization does not tolerate racism, homophobia, or transphobia. And all of these were allegedly in her social media posts. You guys can look them up online and look for yourself. Bolton House, however, argues that she's being targeted again, conservative Christian. And she has characterized her removal as an example of cancel culture, and she rightfully earned the crown, and she wants it back. Right now, her runner-up, a Miss Mila Hadley, right there on the right of each of those graphics, has stepped into the role, and unless something changes, she will be competing in Miss USA on the 27th of August. So it's an interesting intersection here of Mormonism and beauty pageants and Christianity and old social media posts that resurface. Any thoughts from either of you?
Well, it's an interesting case, only to me because it's going to intersect with whatever the bylaws are of the Miss USA pageant.
Exactly.
I do find it funny that her whole defense is that she won the pageant and then they got wind of the fact that she's actually a Christian, a conservative Christian.
Yeah.
So then they just found a reason to strip her of her title. Yeah, I don't think that's likely. What do you think?
I'm sure you'll be covering it. I'm sure you'll be covering it for us if there's more information about the actual legal case. That'll be interesting for you to go into if that happens.
Well, they're going to have to put it on the fast track, obviously.
Right.
Yeah, I look at this and in my head, I'm going like, you have to have spent some time in front of the public doing something scholarly. Again, I didn't go to college to be a historian. I'm definitely not a professional academic. But I think I've done enough work that if I stand at a podium and talk about Mormonism, not from the believing standpoint, but certainly as from outsiders, they would see credibility there. I don't know what makes her qualified to be someone who stands at a pulpit and basically just gives her layman's exploration of Book of Mormon archaeology. It's crazy. And I'll say this too. Oh, go ahead, please.
It's mostly the fact she looks like Wonder Woman.
Yes.
There is that.
But then you just need to come clean about why you have certain people up at the podium talking, because again, I maybe she knows a lot, but no one would know that she knows a lot. she's not displayed it for anyone.
Well, I think Shane Baldwin makes her look like a bloody genius.
That may be true. And then the other thing I've noticed, again, I'll just go off topic here. Kwaku this is an old picture of him because he looks like a Mormon in that picture. He's wearing a collared shirt. He's got a jacket on.
She's under Kwaku.
The modern day Kwaku, they didn't use this picture. I don't know. I don't know.
Float down here, Kwaku. Beep, beep, Richie.
I'm always shocked every time I see that. Like it's a jump scare. I just don't expect it.
Nobody wants to play with a clown.
Anyway, I think maybe there's a lack of real, credible evidence presenters at the Firm Foundation. You guys are digging kind of through the muck and trying to find, dust some people off. And
did you see they even have Pinecker there?
They did. Yeah. Now, I believe she was speaking as an influencer and how to, utilize social media to get the message out. So I think that was more of her role at that conference. But just for a lot of people that said, how do you know she's LDS? Well, she's using it like a sword right now. And also we have this evidence from the Book of Mormon symposium, which was only 2 years ago. So
yeah, I was reading the bio.
Like the kids from band camp.
Yeah, well, I was reading the bio. It says that, for her passion for reading the scriptures, as well as the history and archaeological findings of the Book of Mormon is immense. So
Emphasis on passion.
I don't think those words mean what she thinks they do.
And immense.
All right. Enough of that.
Wonder Woman. Okay. Next story.
Yeah. Thank you very much. RFM, I think you've got this one right. Former deputy prosecutor charged with solicitation in Idaho.
Yeah.
Does not sound good.
No, it's not a good charge. Afton attorney, former deputy prosecutor. I know you already said this. Charged with solicitation in Idaho. This is a guy who's an attorney and a Mormon, apparently. I'll go ahead and I'll move this forward. He shows up over there on Floodlit. John Dennis Bowers. This was emailed to me as well as to you, Rebecca. I think maybe by the same person separately. And thank you. John Bowers, born in 1960. It's a great year. Was a Mormon church member in Afton, Wyoming, and former bishop of the Smoot Ward in the Afton, Wyoming stake. Called as bishop November 2017, released December 2024. So that's a year and a half ago.
Yeah, but it was 19. He was called in 19 and released in.
Oh, that makes sense. That would be a 5-year.
Yeah,
period.
exactly. Yeah.
Thank you. An Afton lawyer and former Lincoln Deputy County prosecutor and finalist in a judgeship was charged with soliciting commercial sexual activity July 26, 2026, pretrial conference scheduled September 9, 2026. So the soliciting commercial sexual activity is basically patronizing a prostitute before we stop calling them prostitutes anymore and started using different kind of language to describe the charges. It looks like they're doing that over in that state as well. So here is what we have in this article. An Afton attorney who previously served as a Lincoln County deputy prosecutor and was recently a finalist for a Wyoming judgeship is facing a misdemeanor solicitation charge in neighboring Idaho after investigators allege he offered to pay for a sexual encounter through an anonymous dating app. John Bowers, 66, same age as me, was charged July 22nd in Bear Lake County with one misdemeanor count of solicitation for commercial sexual activity. A probable cause affidavit says the investigation began June 24th after a private citizen contacted the Montpelier Police Department about messages exchanged with Bowers on Sniffies. Is that Sniffies or Sniffles?
Sniffies, I think.
Okay.
Someone in the chat is saying Sniffies.
I thought you might be familiar with it, Rebecca.
Yeah, no, I'm not. All these things, I'm like, how does an old bishop know about this stuff? All these stories, they know about these weird. I need to get out more, I guess.
I don't know. Sniffies, a location-based social networking app. What does that mean, location-based, Bill? Do you know, Rebecca or Bill?
I think it means like
location-based?
like you can connect with people in your area,
Oh,
like
okay.
you have your location and you can say, hey, look, there's somebody 10 feet away who wants to connect with me. Let's do it.
Let's connect. Thank you. Okay. The reporting party, who described himself in the affidavit as someone who reports suspected criminal activity to law enforcement, so basically a nosy Nelly, told police Bowers offered $300 to party and said he would bring party supplies. Investigators interpreted the messages as an offer to pay for a sexual encounter. WT Aaron Farr. Really, what the Aaron Farr is this? I got this far and I said, you got to be kidding me. They better have more than that. Bowers has pleaded not guilty. No kidding. And I expect there's going to be a quick motion to dismiss. And unless they have more than this, it's going to be granted. This thing's going to be thrown out. And if I were the judge, I would make the prosecutor foot the bill for this guy's attorney's fees for charging such a dumbass thing as this. There's no evidence here, not in this reporting of it. Okay. I haven't seen the affidavit, but I expect you'd have something here. It's a reporter looking at it and reporting on what presumably would be the most important parts, right? Bill, could you read this part again, this slide? I noticed you were sort of shaking your head a little bit when we got to the last part of it.
Yeah, the reporting party, who described himself in the affidavit as someone who reports suspected criminal activity to law enforcement, told police that Bowers offered $300 to party and said he would bring the party supplies.
Now, understand, the prosecutor has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that these references are to buying women for sex.
Yeah, the reason I shook my head is because, like you, there would have to be something more than this.
Yes, we're
And
paying
if-
women for sex, I should say.
Right.
Yes.
I would read it like alcohol or drugs, let's party
Yes.
supplies that are, hallucinogens, something. But I
Decorations?
would never think.
Yeah,
Table
the
centerpieces?
sex,
Yeah, there's no doubt, Rebecca, that it allegedly means something and
Right.
may likely be so. But in the legal system, beyond a reasonable doubt, when he walks in and says, I had my kazoo, I had my hat with the string on, you're going to have to be able to argue something that proves that that's probably not what it was.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And he should say probably nothing. Say, let them prove it. And they can't, not unless they got something more than this.
Says investigators interpreted the messages as an offer to pay for a sexual encounter.
Yes.
Bowers has pleaded not guilty.
This is why prosecutors have to beware of such investigators, and they are out there. Most of them are in the State Patrol. Little State Patrol humor out there. Hope not offending anybody. On May 21st, investigators with the Montpelier Police Department, assisted by the Wyoming Division of Criminal Investigation — I could tell you some stories about the State Patrol, and someday I will when I was a prosecutor — contacted Bowers outside his Afton law office while executing a search warrant for his electronic devices. After returning to the office, Bowers agreed to speak with the investigators and surrendered his cell phone. In other words, he cooperated completely. The affidavit notes investigators later recovered digital evidence they believe linked Bowers to the account used in the conversations, including a Gmail account allegedly created the same day under the name Jack Black that received a Sniffies activation email, none of which changes the non-criminal little comments he made, even if he made them. So what? During the interview, Bowers acknowledged using the app and exchanging messages, but denied intending to solicit prostitution. I truly didn't think I was soliciting, Bowers told investigators. He sounds as surprised as I am. Bowers also described his conduct as morally wrong and inappropriate, while maintaining he never intended to arrange a commercial sexual encounter. I could see how someone could hold both opinions at the same time in this situation. What do you guys think? That's the end of that story.
Well, I will say that I was able to find out that he's been a primary teacher in his ward. We talked about how he was a bishop and he's been a primary teacher for about a year and a half, but he was released just 2 weeks after that date there, the May 21st. So somebody in the ward, somebody in the stake, somebody got wind of it. So, maybe it's a coincidence that he was released right then, but somehow people are finding out the information about what happened and about Sniffies. And so he was released. He's no longer a primary teacher. So maybe he can get reinstated if, it's all proved to be nothing. But obviously, don't you think something happened? I mean, something, but maybe not illegal. Is that your point, RFM? That, people do all kinds of things.
Well, I think you said he's married.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then maybe it's not moral, but is it illegal? That's the question.
Right. And I think his position that he set forth when he was suddenly pounced upon by the local constabulary was, what I did was morally wrong, but I wasn't trying to solicit anybody.
Right. And somebody just made the comment in the chat, which I think is great. If he's willing to, volunteer to bring $300 of party supplies, he should be the ward party planner in his next calling. Because where are you going to find that kind of a person, right?
No kidding.
More than willing to bring that money.
The rest of his life taking the receipts and trying to get them paid back by the bishop.
Exactly.
I'm evaluating everything. I'm thinking that if I can go under the pseudonym of Jack Black, I might get invited to more cool parties that are Jumanji as well. So we'll see. There are people who do bring party supplies, who do have parties that cost money, and not necessarily directly connected. Sexual activity can occur at the end of a party. It seems like they're going to have to prove that he explicitly meant that party supplies was something related to sex. Otherwise, I'm with you, RFM. This is getting tossed.
This is a rookie move that may have been filed by an officer. I don't know that it was filed by a prosecutor. It's a misdemeanor. So at least in Washington, they can be filed by a law enforcement officer. Felonies can be filed only by prosecutors is what I'm saying. So the prosecutor may not bear the responsibility for this charge having been filed if it was done by police. The prosecutor is just going to be the one who has to dismiss it.
There we go. Well, there's that. All right. Thank you for that story. We're having a lot of fun tonight. It's been a great show so far. I love it. Now we've got an LDS leader in Russia who has been detained. I read this story. I'm really excited for you to talk about it. I guess there's a mix-up about when and where things happened.
That's exactly right. And this is another one where I caught wind of it really early and I posted it and I had people say, boy, it's a slow news day. This is nothing. Prove it. I love the opportunity to prove it because since I posted about it, a lot of other people, including faithful people, have been podcasting and getting the information out there. It's a really interesting situation. And I know we're not going to know a lot about it, but I'll tell you what I do know. And we will or won't find out more going forward. It is Russia after all. So the headlines here are LDS leader detained for financing terrorism. That's pretty extreme. The other headline in the middle there, I can't read, but it says something similar. There's a picture of the gentleman. A lot of people have said it looks like he's in a garment top, and we're going to see a little video in a minute when he was arrested in his home.
Is this the guy at Burning Man?
No. It basically says LDS leader detained in Russia, a local Latter-day Saint leader. And there's some confusion. Some people say leader of the whole church there. Now, I've looked into his callings. I can't exactly see possible high council, possible elders quorum. I can't tell exactly, but the paper is spinning it that he's a high leader. I can't verify that from my sources. Anyway, he's reportedly been detained and is facing a potentially serious criminal case involving Russia's laws against so-called extremist organizations. And we're talking about contributions to organizations. The man is 74-year-old Valentin Gavrilov, who reportedly leads a Latter-day Saint congregation in Vyborg, a city near Russia's border with Finland. Again, I can't verify that exactly. And it may be that they keep those kind of callings more under wrapped. But if we go to the next, I will show you here is a very brief clip of them going into his apartment and detaining him. And there is sound. There was sound when I put it in there, but I don't know if okay, it's that short. And there was sound, but it's not coming through.
You guys didn't hear any sound? There was sound.
No, I didn't hear any sound.
No, I'm guessing it's Russian.
Yeah. Basically just people walking in and you can see him being, let's watch it one more time. You can see him being pressed up against the wall. Somebody says, hey, like what's going on? And, of course it's all in Russian, but yeah, it's just kind of the sound of people walking and talking. And if you look on the left there, he is up against the wall. He's got his hands up. Again, that's a little old guy who is part of a ward there. Okay, so if we go to the next one, not only did they search and detain him, they went over to the LDS meeting house. And somebody from that area has told me that other meeting houses are sort of repurposed from other buildings, but this is one that was actually built as a meeting house. And so if there's no sound, what you would have heard is just people kind of talking. You'll see someone unlocking a door and you'll see the officials walking in, but they did search a meeting house too.
Они черная кофта, я говорил светлая. Ну да, вот это все они, да. Открывайте, конечно.
I hope they're feeling the spirit.
Yeah, it is kind of sad to me just to see them going in there, you know, I don't know. It's pretty scary, I think. And they just kind of look around. Okay, so that's it. And the rest of the video was the gentleman speaking in Russian and right to the camera and sort of saying, you know, there's a misunderstanding. It isn't what you think. So basically what they're talking about is the Russian authorities have accused Gavrilo of financially supporting an organization connected to the late Russian opposition leader, Alexei Navalny. I'm butchering all these. Sorry, everybody. His anti-corruption foundation was designated an extremist organization by a Russian court in 2021. So making a donation to this organization, financing an extremist organization, can result in a lengthy prison sentence. But of course, this gentleman, the bishop or leader, he says, look, if I did make a donation, it was before it was designated and put on that extremist list. So that makes it really difficult. And then he also says, I think I even pushed the wrong button defense. So this really doesn't have anything to do with the LDS Church, but that he is a member and possibly a leader, yet they are still searching his phone and they're searching the LDS meeting house, as you saw there. So in a video circulating, let me go forward one here. In a video circulating online, authorities questioned him about a donation. He insists the donation occurred years ago before the organization was declared extremist. He tells the officer that was 5 years ago. When the officer says it happened after the designation, the gentleman responds, no, it was before. It was a very long time ago. It was when the extremist leader was still alive. So there's just some confusion here with this guy. The officer responds that investigators will determine what happens and say they will examine his phone. So they took his phone to look at that. In addition to going into the church building, there are conflicting reports about the alleged donation. One account says that the transfer occurred accidentally after he clicked a button offering financial assistance. So
he went onto their website in order to not donate.
Exactly. That's it. So the Russian security officials reportedly searched an LDS a Latter-day Saint meeting house, as you saw in Viborg, as part of the investigation. And this is important because the Latter-day Saints have already faced significant restrictions in Russia. In 2016, the law severely restricted missionary activity. I think, remember that. And the LDS Church subsequently stopped referring to its missionaries in Russia as missionaries, just calling them volunteers. We've seen that in other countries, of course. And it appears that this is like a personal donation, doesn't really have anything to do with the church, but he could still be in a lot of trouble. I will say one more thing. As I was kind of online messaging back and forth with a person there in Russia who was letting me know stuff, the person casually mentioned, oh, yeah, I don't know if this will affect the opening or affect the Russian temple. And I went, stop the presses. Do you guys remember when I reported about a year ago that the Russian temple had been built? I had randomly run into a family member who said that their family member had been instrumental in getting that temple built. President Nelson announced it, but nothing ever happened that we knew of. And I kind of just said anecdotally, I talked to somebody who said their family member was on the committee and they really did push it through and there is a temple. Here's a second person telling me that there is a temple there, not open, and could be because of this kind of legal pushback that's happening, getting stronger. But I thought that was kind of interesting. So anyway, we'll follow the story and we'll see, but definitely something going on where this gentleman's detained and a question about a contribution, and it's kind of spilling out in touching the LDS community there too. Thoughts
It
on
would
that?
be remarkable if the church had completed a temple in Russia and wasn't crowing about it, especially with President Nelson at the helm.
Yeah, you can't though. I mean, look at all. Yeah, you have to keep it very under wraps. But I'll find out more about it. But the two people now, anecdotally, have told me this. Random, separate
So you
sources.
think President Nelson learned his lesson from the announcement of the China temple?
That exactly. Just can't randomly announce them. Yeah.
All I'll say is I was laughing at the end of your story, and I didn't want the audience to think that I was laughing at your story. It was a very serious story about a man in Russia.
Yeah.
Again, it seems like he's posing lots of excuses.
Yeah.
One that happened a long time ago. One, I pushed the wrong button. And as RFM noted, to make a donation online, you really have to push more than one wrong button.
Yeah.
You have to enter your debit card or credit card info.
Yeah. You have to go to the site.
Yeah.
You know, that's what are you doing on the site? So, but then he's saying this was before it was even a problem, you know, before this was designated something. So we'll find out. I haven't seen this on any, of course, official church channels, but there have been some other faithful apologist podcasting about it.
I was laughing because I didn't know of this sniffies. So I looked up sniffies while you were talking.
Gosh.
It was interesting. I was there for a moment. I don't know that I'll be revisiting it, but we can continue with the last story. So
Are you bringing $300 to the party? That's what I want.
And party supplies.
All right, let's move on. Okay. New Sunday schedule. So this is our final story, I believe, for the night. This was in the church news. This was church releases, instructional videos. It got covered in lots of other places, LDS Living and whatnot. This was church releases, instructional videos for the September Sunday schedule changes. Again, we brought to you the news that the church was reducing its, or I shouldn't say reducing, but changing its schedule from sacrament meeting and then 1 hour of either Sunday school or Relief Society, priesthood, young men, young women. Now they're going to just 25 minutes of each week. I can't imagine trying to accomplish anything in 25 minutes. So the church has now released a series of instructional videos preparing members for the new Sunday schedule that begins September 6th. Under the change, Sunday school, Relief Society, Elders Quorum, and young women and young men will meet every week, but in much shorter 25-minute blocks. Church leaders say the purpose, and they laid this out. I watched all the videos this morning.
Really?
Please?
I said, really?
Yeah, I watched all the videos this morning.
You took one for the team.
I did. And I did put it on 1.5 speed on half of them. And then half of them you could put on 2 times speed. You know how church leaders talk. It goes really slow. So it wasn't too bad. So church leaders say the purpose is to focus more directly on Jesus Christ, strengthen gospel learning in the home, and increase fellowship and belonging at church.
How's it going to increase it?
Yeah.
Well, I think when you read that last one and read between the lines, it was when we did every other week different things, a lot of people stayed home. And by making people have to come every Sunday, we increase fellowship and belonging at church.
Okay.
No, we can all see where this is going. I cannot wait.
Yep. And there were details from the articles that got posted about it, and there were details in the videos. And so I'm going to share those now. The youth curriculum is also becoming more structured. The first Sunday will emphasize the new For Strength of Youth guide. The second and third Sundays will focus on core doctrines. And the fourth Sunday will deal with blessings, privileges, and opportunities. So I'm going to tell you, this is not the Mormonism I grew up with. This seems so much fluff and watered down. And let's see here. Watching the training, I also picked up what feels like at least some apprehension about whether these extremely short meetings are actually going to work. When I listened to Patrick Kieran and Elder Bednar talk about it, I could just sense a little bit of like reservation on their part about like what this was going to look like. There were several moments where they were emphasizing that like you local people, you're going to have to come prepared. You're going to have to really buckle down and do these things or else, you're not going to have time to do anything. So just noting that. And then let's see here. Elder Patrick Kieran describes the church as being in a moment of adjustment. Those are his words. While he and David Bednar repeatedly emphasize that local leaders will have to use the limited time very intentionally keep sacrament meetings focused on Christ, even though they just changed the hymn books, took out a bunch of old hymns, put in a bunch of new ones that no one knows. I want to make a joke about your good friend over at the church history department and some of the hymns he knows, but I won't pick on him any further for his mistake. I'll let him be. By the way, just as I said, in a moment where we just changed the hymn books for the first time significantly in a long time, Bednar and Kieran tell the audience that in sacrament, you need to choose hymns that people actually know and can actually sing and avoid wasting precious minutes.
No.
Isn't that a strange thing to say after you just created a new hymn book
The
with a
left hand and the right hand.
No.
They got no
And
clue.
it's a disaster from what I'm reading. The hymn book is a disaster. They took out the familiar songs. They put in songs nobody knows. Hard to play. That's a huge issue. Hard to sing. Nothing is familiar. It's the exact opposite of what you're saying that Kieran is saying. It's a disaster. Someone on the faithful side used the word disaster. They're seeing it. That's the thing. The faithful are seeing this.
Going back
They're
to your
dreading
comment
it.
about my good friend Bill,
Yes.
when I was in Salt Lake City this past week,
Yes.
Wendy and I tried to look him up at the church office building. We're referred over to the church library, history library, left a message for him. And Wendy did say that, because he wasn't in, but Wendy had said that if he was in, she was going to ask him to hear his rendition of Swanee River.
That was going to be so
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
Yes. That would have been, his face would have turned red and he would have felt lots of shame. So
Right there in the lobby of the church history library.
that would have been fun. I would have hoped you would have had your phone out as that was being asked. That would have been good. All right. Couple more. I've got 3 more slides here and then we'll get into what we're all putting out this week. They were talking about making the church more Christ-centered. So what interested me most was the repeated emphasis on making the church more Christ-centered. I'll just know that's a positive aspiration. We have all been clamoring for years that we need to stop emphasizing Joseph Smith, who has a very checkered past. We need to stop promoting loyalty and obedience to the top 15, and it really does need to move towards being a Christ-focused church. And when I watched all these videos, that seemed to be the connecting dot among all the video clips and the write-ups in the various news coverage, was that not that it's different than any time in the past, but they are emphasizing that this shift is about making the church more Christ-centered. And I think I put here, I think that's kind of a sounding brass or tinkling cymbal problem, because the institutional church has never really resolved it. They've been saying for so long that they want to make this church a Christ-centered church.
Yes.
And yet Mormon culture and correlated teaching have continued to devote enormous energy to prophetic authority, loyalty to current leaders, defending Joseph Smith, and maintaining credibility of the institution itself. That might be the reason women and maybe members generally are leaving. So for me, the real test isn't whether leaders say Jesus Christ more frequently, Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ, in these videos. It's whether the institution becomes willing to prioritize Christ-like values, because that's really what it means to make the church more Christ-like. To emphasize Jesus Christ means that from the very top down, you have to focus on honesty, humility, compassion, accountability, transparency, care for those who have been harmed, taking care of the poor and the needy instead of storing your money away in a hedge fund. And I think until you fix those things, LDS Church, you're going to continue to see people leaving in droves, especially the women. So there's that. And they need to do that even when doing so requires acknowledging serious failures by revered leaders. And that's the number one no-no in Mormonism. In other words, you cannot fully move towards Christ, LDS Church. You cannot move towards him. You can't make him the center of your meetings while simultaneously insisting that institutional credibility and prophetic reputation remain on the pedestals and they cannot be seriously challenged. Well, at least not without continuing to create disaffection over the ethics of leaders and problematic history. The new curriculum does explicitly ask members to consider how sacrament meeting can produce spiritual renewal and growth through Jesus Christ. So at least rhetorically, the stated direction is unmistakable, but it sounds a lot like things said 5 years ago, 7 years ago, 11 years ago, 13 years ago, 17 years ago, and 24 years ago. So over and over and over again, it's like they want to get there, but they're just not willing to do the things that get you there. And maybe this time is the one. We'll see.
I think the more they continue to say follow Jesus, the more they will continue to make the equation of Jesus and the church.
Yeah. But I think the numbers say it's not working anymore. They might want to actually do the thing and move towards a better, healthier, more honest, more kind, more taking care of the needy kind of church. So in this shift toward a home-centered, church-supported model, the church continues moving towards that. That's all the emphasis in all of these videos. Members are being encouraged to do more preparation and discussion at home, moving beyond. And they said this specifically. There was one moment where Bednar goes, the way the church used to work a couple of decades ago is we'd all get home from church, and as a father or as a mother, we'd say, hey, kids, what did you learn at church today?
Mm-hmm.
And he said that that's not going to work anymore. He said with the shortened Sunday classes serving increasingly as a supplement rather than the primary place where religious formation occurs, that there has to be longer, bigger, deeper discussions at home. There has to be conversations that are not the simple, hey, how was church today? And church was great. Thanks, mom and dad. Let's eat lunch. Let's move on. It needs to be that church really is taking place at home. That's where the majority of the teaching goes. And I just noted as I was listening to the videos, I said, this has consequences that has me curious if such is really the intention or if they haven't really considered the consequences of this. The more religious education gets pushed into individual homes, the less correlated Mormonism inevitably becomes. Now, one family may have thoughtful conversations about difficult history or a doctrine or theological questions. Another may simply read the manual and gloss over it. Another may barely do anything at all. And I think most Mormons will fall into the third group. Children growing up in these homes will therefore experience even more different Mormonisms. It also subtly changes where the responsibility resides. If a young person later objects to something they were taught, there is now more room for the institution to say, in effect, that was how your family taught it. That's not how we taught it. That's how your family taught it. Rather than having every teaching traced cleanly back to standardized church classroom or correlated statement in a manual or book. There was another person here. There was two videos that had both a sister and a brother from the church. One of them had an elder, Arnolfo Valenzuela. He argued that the weekly format can actually create room for more voices. We have less time, but we're going to hear more voices. And so he's suggesting that everybody comes into church on Sunday, having read the general conference talk, and now it's going to be a group discussion with all these voices having value.
What an incredible idea. You mean like the way it's always supposed to have been ever since I joined the church 50 years ago and before?
Yes, just like that. Except not as structured, right? Like the gospel doctrine teacher comes in and reads the lesson and has the paragraph that says, don't talk about the second anointing, don't talk about the polygamy in 132, and they manipulate the classroom so as to never go to that place. This, according to him, this is going to be a safer space for everyone to have conversations in the directions that they want to. Do you know how crazy that's going to be in 25 minutes? It's going to be a failure. I can see it now.
It's not going to happen. They don't want it to happen.
No. I give this 2 years tops.
Maybe less. The faithful are already dreading this. I'm always over on faithful social media. They are so just dejected about it. They know the burden that's going to be put on them as teachers. They know that they don't get to maybe stay home one Sunday, right? They have to go every week and put themselves in the system. And I have to ask of upper leadership, have you never been to a real church, another kind of a church, where you go there and get instruction from someone who's trained in pastoral care, who may be a theologian. You sit and you receive, you learn, and then you go home and you talk about it. Exactly what you said, Bill. What'd you learn at church today? And you have these discussions. No one is going to do this. The only people that are going to do the home church are people like my family growing up. And it's going to be very difficult and rigid, and it's going to put a huge burden on the family and the kids. But I agree with your point. A lot of people right now say, I was never raised like that. I never heard that. You're going to hear that more and more because they're not going to hear that. They're going to be raised by parents who didn't hear it like we did, and it's going to be a whole new church. But just lip service to Jesus, 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 Jesus. But none of the real content. But I feel really bad actually for the faithful people because they're not looking forward to this. They can see it because they're the ones in the trenches actually trying to implement this. And it's a delusion. I don't know who thought of this, but it's completely a delusion. And I don't know if you guys want to talk about the post that we all saw today where somebody said that they were in a high council and that they were told the schedule change is a blessing because there's only going to be about 20 minutes max for discussion. And we don't want discussion.
Yes, that would
we
be
just want to talk about Jesus. And we've all said we thought that was the reason behind it. I think that is the reason behind it. No discussion. No
But you
deep
can only get so far
dives.
in a limited amount of time, which is why generally, sacrament talks are 15 minutes, and same for general conference talks. Even if you're an apostle nowadays, you get 15 minutes and that's it. Lessers get 10 minutes if you're 70 or some other officer. That's usually the way it works. So going back to this, I just wonder if anybody has brought up to the leadership the idea that the extent to which they continue to push off church functions and church-centeredness to home-centeredness could be the degree to which they are making themselves extinct.
Yeah, the one caveat to push back against that is that the talks that are going to be used for this 25 minutes are general conference talks. The ward gets to pick them, so ward leadership gets to decide what general conference talks from the last 6 months get used, and so it is a way for the leaders to have their voice put back into the room. But as you point out, 25 minutes with a gospel doctrine teacher isn't enough. But at least a gospel doctrine teacher who's prepared a lesson can come in, if they're good, really focused, and at least make a couple of good points, getting the class sort of to move on something. What Elder Valenzuela says is that this is going to be a meaningful shift away from one teacher delivering a lesson toward members teaching one another. Can you imagine a room of 25 people teaching one another in 20 minutes?
Can I just say that once again, that's the way it's always supposed to have been, because they always cite to the same passage in the Doctrine and Covenants to say the same old thing that never freaking works. It's never worked. It never will.
And it's not 25 minutes. Bathroom breaks. Has nobody thought about this? And I'm just not even talking about the primary. I was a primary teacher. We took 15 minutes at the beginning of each class to walk them down the hall, take them to the bathroom, get the wiggles out. I'm talking about adults. By the time people get into those classes, the teacher may be speaking, but not everybody is going to be there. And then finally, maybe 15 minutes of instruction. I saw the saddest little short. It was by one of the young women general presidencies. And she let everybody know that no more reciting of the young women's theme. There just isn't time. Recite it at home, recite it some other places so you don't forget it. But we're not going to be reciting it anymore at the beginning of Young Women. So
I went to a Jehovah's Witnesses meeting. You were talking about going to other churches. I went to a Jehovah's Witnesses meeting, and it's like Mormonism. And I remember I was sitting there with two missionaries. I went with the elders. I was the assistant ward mission leader. I just joined the church, and we just thought it'd be fun to go to some other faith meetings. And we picked the Jehovah's Witnesses, and we're sitting there, and the teacher has a correlated manual from the institution, from the system, to give a lesson to the people. And just like Mormonism, they pass the mic around and let everybody answer questions. But I'm like a third of the way into the hour-long Sunday school, and it occurs to me like those questions in the material are carefully crafted so that this group of people have certain answers that they will easily give to those questions, and nobody's really doing any real discussion here or talking about things where people have to think about new answers and think about how things go together and make new connections. It's just spewing it back out again. And then it struck me, and the very next thought I had is, oh, we do the same thing. We do that too, because that's what Mormonism does. And this will at least not be that. Somebody will pick the general conference talk, walk into the room and say, hey guys, this is our talk. What do you guys think? And for the next 20 minutes, see what people say. So we'll see what happens with that.
And then when there's a huge gap and nobody says anything, the teacher will start reading the freaking talk. And that's what's going to happen every week.
Or you'll have those 4 or 5 people, 2 or 3 people who are always needing to put their little gospel hobbies at the forefront, and they'll take over these conversations.
That could happen too.
Yeah, there's even discussion already on Faithful social media. How do you think we can make this person be quiet or say less? What strategies can we use in Relief Society to make so-and-so not, everybody knows the people in their ward, and that's a death blow to a lesson if some cute little old lady wants to take 12 minutes and talk. So they're already talking about nice ways to get people to shut the F up.
They're not going to work. They're going to have to jump her in the parking lot.
Boy, oh boy.
Oh, I can't wait. I already have people lined up to go and report back to me. So yeah, I'm going to do a whole thing on it.
All right. This is my last slide. Again, more movement towards a home-centered church. So this feels to me like the very beginning phases of decentralization. If you guys remember this, you guys are a little older than me. I remember, not because I experienced it, but because I was a huge history buff and I wanted to kind of know what Mormonism looked like in generations past. And so I started collecting at the time some of the old Hugh Nibley manuals. Strange thing, right? Hugh Nibley, as a scholar in the church, was permitted to write some of the curriculum for priesthood. And in the past, prior to Bruce R. McConkie and that whole generation of Mormon leadership, we used to have a decentralized church to some extent, much bigger, much more decentralization than today. This feels to me like the brethren no longer want to get caught saying stupid things that'll be reversed and abandoned later. And they're wanting to get themselves out of the picture, let people discuss this on their own in the meetings, let people discuss these things at home, and they get to let a generation or two grow up, experience Mormonism, and then look back and go like, I don't know what you guys are talking about, you old people talking about the way Mormonism used to be in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. It's never been like that for me. I don't know anything about Jesus being married to people or the age of the earth being 6,000 years old, because they're not going to hear any of that. And so this feels to me like decentralization. And again, like I said, not the first time. Relief Society and Elders Quorum members are being encouraged to prepare during the week. The curriculum continues to lean heavily on general conference talks. I think we've tried that before too, with local leaders deciding which talks their congregations need. So the church is simultaneously decentralizing how the message gets discussed while continuing to centralize much of what gets discussed around the words of senior church leaders.
And please don't forget that what this means is that of the vast body of material that one could cover in a Sunday school class, what the church has done a priori is limit and restrict its teachers to the most boring shit imaginable. That's all they can do, is teach the most boring shit imaginable.
And if you haven't offended people bad enough by hiding history and lying about it, if you haven't offended people bad enough by saying that people who have sexual inclinations that aren't heterosexual, cisgender are inappropriate, if you haven't offended people enough by doing the things you do by having patriarchy and putting your thumb down on women or not apologizing for the race issue, as you point out, RFM, now you're making church, which is already boring, even more boring. And you're like, this is going to work. People are going to stay now. And I'm looking at this and going, you guys, you are creating a cluster F. Again, I won't say the word, but you're creating a horrible mesh of things that are going to just run into each other. And
you're creating a horrible product.
It was already a horrible product, and it's even more horrible now. This is not going to go well.
The Mormon church, now twice as boring.
And I have to say it actually might work because people will start ignoring what they hear in church and they will live in their own created Mormonism that they're being taught and living at home. We already say over and over, you can sit in a pew and behind you is someone who's a monogamy affirmer for Joseph Smith. You have a mother in heaven, crystal blessing person next to you. You have somebody that's a Scales and Bensonite Mormon on the other side. You have a Restore Mormon. You have a Faith Matters. Everybody's already sort of living their own version of Mormonism. We say this often when we hear apologists talk. What did they invent? What do they think Mormonism is? Now this really can be their Mormonism. They are learning that at home. They are living that at home. Sure, they go to the building and they might hear something different, but their Mormonism is at home. So I see divergence even more than there is now.
Yeah. And I get it. You have to change because you've been doing things so unethically and dishonestly all along the way. But also when you don't have any explicit claims that are fun to talk about and to research and to think about and have conversations around, you're creating a Sunday experience that people are going to go, why don't I just stay home? Why don't I just not do this Mormon thing anymore? At least in the 80s and 90s, there was a pride in having answers to all the questions, knowing we were right, and knowing those darn evangelicals were just wrong for all the wrong reasons.
It's the excitement and joy that everyone inside of a conspiracy theory feels in their heart.
Yes. Yeah.
Think about the mixed faith marriages this is going to lead to within Mormonism, right? I mean, I married somebody who watched TV on Sunday. I didn't. That was the biggest deal to me. That was something we didn't talk about before marriage, right? Imagine the kind of Mormons that may not discuss things and come together and realize they're completely opposite in their beliefs and what they understand and what they think Mormonism is. It could be interesting.
Yeah. As people get together having different beliefs, they're just creating such a watered down experience. I think what I've arrived at is maybe the church leaders aren't as stupid as I sometimes think they are in terms of doing this kind of stuff. I think they have a problem for which there is no good answer. Do you stay with the Mormonism of the 80s and 90s? No, you can't do that. Can you acknowledge that the leaders have messed up and they've been dishonest and they've been wrong about a lot of things? You can't do that. Can we just get away from it and make church Methodism and have us all just enjoy an hour and a half of loving kindness towards each other and go home? Well, I don't think that's going to work. I just don't think there is any good answer, and this may be the lesser of all evils. We'll see what happens. Throughout the training, there's also this framing that change itself is fundamental to the gospel. Bednar goes on this rant about how repentance is change. And the Book of Mormon talks about us having personal change, the mighty change of Alma spoke of, and that this is a moment for the church to go through change, and we shouldn't be bothered by it because change is part of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so now the church is being asked to change in this particular moment. That may ultimately be the most interesting thing to watch. If this really creates more voices, more genuine discussion, stronger communities, and a church more centered on Jesus and member autonomy in regards to belief rather than institutional loyalty, well, that would be meaningful movement. But if the format changes while the underlying hierarchy of whose words carry authority remains essentially untouched, then we may discover that Mormonism has changed the architecture of Sunday without changing nearly as much about what happens inside as these leaders are encouraging with their words. I'll just finish. On the right, you see the Liahona magazine, which will be where the conference talks are taken from. By the way, constantly changing magazine names. That always seemed interesting to me. I don't know why they just can't stick. The magazine is still the same magazine. Just keep the dang name. For the strength of, as if moving the chairs on the deck of the Titanic makes any difference at all. The new For Strength of Youth manual is there. Again, it has also reduced the amount of rigidity, and it's just a lot more fluff than it used to be. At the very top, I show the diagram we showed months ago about how that 25-minute is all going to be used up with an hour-long sacrament meeting. And then at the very bottom, it's time for a home-centered church supported by what it takes to place inside our branch, ward, and stake buildings President Russell M. Nelson. I can't wait to see where this prophetic leadership goes. This is going to be amazing.
You know, I'm not opposed to change myself. I think change can be a good thing. But given the fact that God is reputedly omniscient and can see everything in the future and has all that power and everything, could you just get to the version of the church schedule that's the good one and save us all these intermediary steps? That's all I want to know.
The one they're using in the millennium when Jesus is heading up the Sunday school.
Can we just go there now? Is that okay?
No, it's so much fun along the way. It's about the journey, RFM. And there is another magazine they just announced because people are very confused. And the Young Women Presidency came out and they go, okay, you might be confused on this, but there's a magazine that's going to come out with the lessons for young women. You know, that's going to come out. You're going to read from that. So there shouldn't be this much instruction on how to go to church. Drive up to the building, walk in, sit down, and just, you know, experience. It shouldn't be this difficult. Like
I think
said,
the reason
can't
they
wait.
changed it from the ensign to the Liahona was that they had hopes that a larger percentage of the membership would actually know how to pronounce the name of the magazine correctly.
Ensign and Zun. You're going to find all kinds of different people.
Ensign is the correct one.
I know it is, but I said ensign, and I was raised to say it that way. So,
It's not a publication of the U.S. Navy.
well, maybe
Well,
it should be.
talk about church being boring. You know what won't be boring?
What?
The post-Mormon
Cruise. That's not going to be boring at all.
No, this
No.
I saw that RFM, you submitted your excursions that you're going on. You notified our travel agent some of the places on the ship you'll be at certain times. Excuse me.
Yes.
Post-Mormon Celebration Cruise, September 13th. We are just over a month away.
Wow.
Teresa and I were looking over the calendar of events on the cruise ship today, and we're super excited. We leave on the 13th of September. We embark from Long Beach, California, right outside Los Angeles. This runs until September 20th. We've got tons of fun. I saw Kathleen's document showing all the events aboard the ship. You can go sing karaoke with, I think, RFM, you're going to be singing karaoke. Is that right?
I don't think so. I may be watching others and laughing and pointing, but I don't plan on singing myself.
I'll be at the Korihor craps table showing some of the folks how to play craps. There's
Wow.
things, yeah. There'll be tons of events, excursions to go on. So, folks, it's a month away. If you've been on the fence, just do it. Come on the Post-Mormon Celebration Cruise with us. Again, you've got Rebecca, myself, Radio Free Mormon. You've got Landon Brophy, Charlie Harrell, Jana Spangler, Ganesh Cherian, Dr. Julie De Azevedo, Dr. Randall Bell, Dr. John Lund. What's a lot of doctors?
A lot of doctors.
Good help here. And Sam Young. So,
Not enough cooks.
there you go. So please consider doing that. You can go to mormondiscussions.org. At the very top of the website, you'll see Post-Mormon Cruise. Click that. You'll get all the information. For those who are going, we're so excited to see you. One of the things we talked about is getting your taper shirt. And so Teresa and I ordered ours off Amazon. They came in the mail the other day. And so this is an AI image of us wearing them. It made me thinner than I actually am. It made her a little less thin than she actually is. And I asked it to make her thinner to represent what she really looks like. And AI told me I was violating its rules asking me. So I had to just take it for what it was. So Teresa, I'm super sorry. I'm actually the heavier one in our relationship. I look good in this picture though, but
I think you've done a good job of establishing this is all the computer's fault, Bill.
This is the computer's fault.
You're clear.
There are tons of taper shirts on Amazon. This is the one that we got.
I like it.
So, yeah. So there's that. Rebecca, you sent this out the other day on the Facebook group. Don't forget your cruise attire. There is an elegant dinner on the cruise ship. You'll want to have some elegant dinner fabrics to put on yourself for that. We've also got the white hot night. I can think of one religion that does really well at like white kinds of clothing. So us Mormons, we should definitely represent here at the white hot night. And then there's the 80s party. I thought it'd be fun to dress kind of like an 80s Mormon. I don't know if that's any different than another 80s kid, but there's the 80s party. So make sure you bring that attire for those 3 nights as well. I think there's a discount on baptismal jumpsuits since, they're selling so many. So maybe they're running on short supply though. And then tell us about these lanyards that in the taper.
Yeah,
pen.
we were on the first day, like Bill mentioned, everyone's going to wear a shirt of their choosing that has a horse on it, right? But then for the rest of the cruise, we are all going to be given by our wonderful cruise director, Kathleen, a bright orange lanyard. We're going to find that hanging on our cabin doors. So we're going to wear that so we can kind of spot each other. And I thought in addition to that, I bought myself a couple tapir pins I'm going to put on the lanyard, stickers, let's just make it fun so we can all recognize each other, because there's about 200 people so far, and hopefully some of you will still, yes.
I'm sorry, how did you pronounce that word?
Okay, it's pronounced different ways. In my family, we did the French version, tapir, because it was our spirit animal of our family. We did not know it was a post-Mormon symbol. So it could be taper, or it could be tapir, tapir. I'll have to check again, just like I did with the amicus brief. But anyway, the point is, let's make this fun. Let us be able to recognize you if you're coming. So sticker, lanyard, shirt, it's going to be awesome.
And there will be lanyards that are eye-catching.
Yeah, bright orange.
Provided for every attendee. And those should be, by the time you get to your room, again, you got to come on board the ship. You got to go watch an hour-long meeting where they explain sort of the rules of the cruise ship and the safety standards. And then after that is over, when you go to your room, your luggage will be there, I think just outside your door. And on the doorknob should be an orange lanyard that will allow you to wear that all through the week. And all of us post-Mormon, doubting Mormons, nuanced Mormons, from whatever Mormon tradition, because that word belongs to all of us, you'll have the chance to sort of recognize each other. And it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll be eating dinner at night all together. And so, folks, if you I really want to go, I'm on the fence, just come along. And for those who are going, it's going to be a great time. All right, let's get into what we're doing this week, and let's get the heck out of here. This has gone so long tonight.
Well, we're making up for 2 weeks. That's right. So I'm just going to quickly go. Last week, this is already released. Ganesh, Joseph's pet rock, the seer stone that started it all. Ganesh, we had tons of fun. We laughed our way through this, but some really awesome, interesting information you may not have heard before about the seer stone, the pet rock. Also, another episode already out from last week on who authored the Book of Mormon, my little series I'm doing with Patrick, word print studies. Really exciting announcement, commissioning a new word print study. Yeah, someone had to do it. Nobody else is doing it. Patrick is doing it. This is amazing. We've got some universities lined up, and we'll give you more information on this. It's
episode 5. How many episodes are there in this series, Rebecca?
What was that?
Episode 5. How many episodes are there in this series?
At first, we thought 10. It may be 15. There's always new information. I know this is your favorite series, RFM. So yeah, one of these days
I'm just hoping it continues to go on forever.
You know what? Actually might, until the new word print series comes out, and then you'll all be sorry. Then
I don't
you'll
trust
all
word
know.
print studies anymore.
Exactly.
It seems to me like they can be manipulated to say anything the author wants.
Our favorite part of doing the series is having you make your comments when I announce it's coming out. So anyway, this one is already out from last week. So check that out. Coming up Tuesday night, tomorrow night, Mormonisha's regular spot. I think if I can go, can I move forward? What happened to my arrows? One more. One more. There we go. Okay. I don't know if you guys know, but pretty amazing person has started something called the Mormon Graveyard, where he puts things that have been put into the grave from Mormonism. I talked to the person, and we talk about this website, the Mormon Graveyard. That's tomorrow night, Tuesday, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. And one last one coming out later this week on Thursday. We're going to talk again about the real story behind LDS missionary ads. I aired this about a year ago, but I've had so many people request it, and so many more missionary ads. This is a huge buzz around this. We're going to watch this again on Thursday. Whew, that's it for me. What about you guys?
Like the Elephant Graveyard.
You are putting out about as much content as RFM and I combined. My goodness.
I have to keep up, and it's a competition. We all know it. No.
RFM Wednesday night, Mormonism Live.
We're putting together a panel. It's going to be a big panel. It's going to be raucous. It's going to be fun. It's going to be the Sunstone after party from people. Most of these people were present. Most of them presented. And just trying to get a bunch of us together, talked about a couple of things, each a funny thing that happened, an interesting thing that happened. It's going to be a blast. Join us, please, Wednesday, 6:00 p.m. Mountain Time.
Perfect. And then Thursday morning, I should have the discussion number 3 of the LDS missionary discussions. If the church was honest, that should be sometime around 9 a.m. So look out for that. Mormonism After Dark, RFM.
Yeah, that's going to be on Friday night at 8 o'clock p.m. Mountain Time. That's going to be a lot of fun too. And I'm putting something together. I don't want to announce it yet because if it didn't happen, I wouldn't like that. But look for it and join us. This is the place to be after a tough week to have fun and hang out with a bunch of friends and family and deconstruct from that thing we call Mormonism.
And then all of our favorite episode, Saturday, Radio Free Mormon, broadcasting behind enemy lines.
I confess to you, I got no clue as to what's going to be because unlike some people, I've got nothing in the vault. Everything is fresh when it comes off the grill and comes into the podcast lineup. So there's a number of ideas. Something will happen. It'll be worth watching. It'll be Saturday night. It'll premiere. I'll be in the live chat. Please join me.
Perfect. All right. I think that does it. That is it. So, folks, been a long show. We'll get you out of here. Please like and subscribe. Go to both the Mormonish and the Mormon Discussion YouTube channel. Please subscribe to both of those. And please donate to both Rebecca Biblioteca and the Mormonish podcast, as well as Radio Free Mormon and myself at the Mormon Discussion channel. And you can do that through both sides' website. We'll have those links in the show notes. Other than that, folks, Rebecca, RFM, and to the audience, have a great night. Thanks for enjoying the Mormon Newscast.
Good night.
That's a wrap for this week's edition of the Mormon Newscast. We appreciate you tuning in and sharing this time with us. Keep the conversation going and stay informed on all things Mormonism. Until next week, wishing you peace and joy. See you next Monday at 6 p.m. on the Mormon Newscast.